everyone. My name is Jamon McKinney, or you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. Welcome, everyone, to the Juice Alert, episode number 18. If you have not subscribed to the Juice Alert already, be sure to do that right about now. You will not regret it. You can find me on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms. I have a loaded show lined up for you guys today. I'm covering roughly 20 topics today, all football related. We'll talk about Drew Brees versus Aaron Rodgers, Dwayne Haskins being benched. We'll talk about the Steelers. Later in the show, we'll talk about the Browns. Obviously, the Cowboys, Dak Prescott's injury. Several head coaches have been fired. We have so many great topics to talk about and discuss today. I will say I am a little bit behind as far as some of the things I am covering in this episode. And I have included some of the short clips in this episode that I have dropped on YouTube recently, just because I want my podcasting platform people to hear everything that I have to say, So listen, if you're not subscribed to me on YouTube already, you're missing out. You get some of the most instant content from me. Be sure to subscribe to me on YouTube if you have not already. If you just solely listen to me on podcasting platforms, I would most certainly appreciate it if you subscribe to me on YouTube. If you have not already, just type in Juice Alert to YouTube and you will find me. Also, I cannot thank you guys enough for helping me reach 3,000 subscribers. It's been a long journey here on YouTube. A lot of hard work has been put in on my end, and I appreciate all of you that consistently tune into my shows and keep me going here on YouTube. I thank you all. Hopefully we can reach 3,500 subscribers by the end of the year. That was my goal at the start of the year. Also, if you can follow me on social media, that'd be great as well. I love to connect with you guys on Twitter and Instagram. You can find my main Twitter account at GHIMAN McKinney on Twitter. You can find the Juice Alert's Twitter account, on Twitter as well, at the Juice Alert. You can also find me on Instagram at GHIMAN_McKinney. That's my main Instagram. And the Instagram account for the Juice Alert show is the Juice Alert _. Okay, people, without further ado, let's dive right into a great show. Let me address Le'Veon Bell. So Le'Veon Bell gets released by the New York Jets, and a couple days later, he ends up in Kansas City to go play for the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City snagged Le'Veon Bell up on a one-year deal worth $168 million. And I gotta say, man, before I get to the Chiefs side of things, as far as what they're getting in regards to Le'Veon Bell, shame on the New England Patriots. Shame on the New England Patriots. You want to know why I say that? Because the New England Patriots, to me, are a very good team with a very good quarterback in Cam Newton, a very good head coach in Bill Belichick. They have capable wide receivers in terms of Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry. They have a really solid running game. Their defense is once again a top 10 unit. The offensive line is still very good. But the Patriots, in my opinion, needed one or two more extra pieces on offense to really potentially put them over the top. And like I mentioned earlier, N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman are capable wide receivers. But I'm sorry, if you're just relying on those guys to make plays for you on the outside, and you don't really have a second or third punch, come playoff time, you will eventually come up short. And I know that Le'Veon Bell is a running back, but Le'Veon Bell, when he's at his best, he's more than a running back. He's one of the best pass-catching running backs in the entire NFL. And if you pair Le'Veon Bell up with Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, that really good Patriots run game, and you allow Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels to find very creative ways to utilize Le'Veon Bell, maybe you split him out wide and use him as a wide receiver, that could have been a serious, weapon for the Patriots. So I'm very disappointed that the Patriots did not pursue Le'Veon Bell enough. There was really no true real reports that came out that the Patriots really had any interest. And listen, New England, you dropped the ball. You want to know why you dropped the ball? Because now the team that you're going to have to go through has Le'Veon Bell, that being Kansas City. And guess what? The Patriots could have paid for Le'Veon Bell. Don't tell me Bill Belichick and that organization couldn't have found a way to scrap up at least $2 million to go sign Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell signed with the Chiefs for 1 year, less than $2 million in that contract. So there's no excuses for the Patriots. I'm disappointed in them. I'm also kind of disappointed in Chicago. Chicago, they look like a team that's better than I thought. So far they're 4-1. They just got a very good victory versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I will talk about Chicago later on in the show, but I think that Le'Veon Bell would have been a great destination for Chicago. Those are two teams that I'm looking at and saying, man, why did you guys not go out and pursue Le'Veon Bell, especially if he was dirt cheap like he is right here based on this contract, okay? Well, listen, man, the rich get richer. The Kansas City Chiefs did not need Le'Veon Bell, not one bit. They were arguably Super Bowl favorites without Le'Veon Bell. Now, based on what I've been watching, I'd argue the Green Bay Packers through the first 5 weeks of the season have been the best team in all football. But Kansas City, I at least expect them as of right now to get back to the Super Bowl. They're still a very good team, okay? And you look at me, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Sammy Watkins. I mean, that's probably the best wide receiver core in the entire NFL. And you give those weapons to Patrick Mahomes, the best player in all of football as we speak today, the best quarterback in the NFL, along with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a former first-round pick out of LSU, who's been very good this season. Now you give Andy Reid and that coaching staff a new dynamic toy in Le'Veon Bell. Not to mention the Chiefs, they also have a very solid offensive line and an above-average defense, despite the defense being inconsistent at times. Okay, it's still an above-average unit. And see, here's the thing. People have to realize that Le'Veon Bell still has a lot of football left in him. Le'Veon Bell is only 28 years old, okay? And we're just a couple seasons removed from Le'Veon Bell playing at an all-pro level. In 2017, Le'Veon Bell was a Pro Bowl caliber running back. He nearly had 2,000 yards from scrimmage in 2017, and he was one of the best running backs in all of football. The problem with Le'Veon Bell the last couple of years is he's been playing for the Jets. He's been playing behind a sorry offensive line. He's been playing for an offensive coach in Adam Gase that, in my opinion, just flat out doesn't know offense, okay? That's just my opinion. Adam Gase is not a good head coach. The Jets have not found creative ways to utilize Le'Veon Bell. I gotta say, man, if you're Le'Veon Bell, you are jumping for joy. Because, man, Le'Veon Bell, he's going from the worst team in all football, in my opinion, the New York Jets, because if you've been watching Jets football this year, it's hard to find a team worse than the Jets. Le'Veon Bell is going from the worst team in all football to the defending Super Bowl champions. I guarantee you that Le'Veon Bell, he's waving his pom-poms, he's doing a celebration party. I guarantee you Le'Veon Bell is pumped, as well as he should be pumped, man, because listen, man, I'm happy that Le'Veon Bell gets out of New York because the Kansas City Chiefs, just watch. Pay attention to the way the Kansas City Chiefs utilize Le'Veon Bell, because Le'Veon Bell is going from a team that had a terrible offensive line to a team that has a pretty good offensive line. He's going from a coaching staff that doesn't know what they're doing to arguably the best coaching staff in all of football outside of what's going on in New England. Andy Reid is a very creative offensive mind at head coach. He's very, very creative. He's probably the most creative offensive mind in the entire NFL as we speak today. And watch how creative the Chiefs get with Le'Veon Bell. Watch Le'Veon Bell instantly click with that offense, and watch Le'Veon Bell go from a terrible culture to a great culture and absolutely thrive. The Kansas City Chiefs continue to be a step above everyone in the entire NFL. Brett Veach is arguably the best general manager in the NFL as we speak today. A+ at GM, A+ at head coach, A+ at quarterback, A+ roster, in my opinion. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're looking pretty strong, man. Le'Veon Bell, he's going to, help that run game out. He's going to help them out in the passing game. Patrick Mahomes will have another threat in the backfield to throw the football to, along with the weapons he has on the outside. And, man, I like what the Patriots have, as far as their team is concerned. But I'm not going to pick them over Kansas City quite yet to, beat the Chiefs come playoff time, at least as I speak today. As I speak today, the Titans look good, but I can't pick them over the Chiefs convincingly right now. I've seen the Ravens go against the Chiefs and, wet the bed several times. Can't pick them. And Pittsburgh, while they have a pretty good roster and a pretty good head coach, I take Kansas City over Pittsburgh as of right now today. Kansas City looks like they're going back to the Super Bowl, all because they continue to be a step above the NFL. And Kansas City, they're loaded. And if they don't make the Super Bowl, it will be a major disappointment. Honestly, scratch that. If the Chiefs do not go out here and win Super Bowl 55, it's a major disappointment. I don't care what anyone says. This roster has everything that they need. This roster has everything you need to go out there and win a Super Bowl. Kansas City, get it done. If you don't get it done, it's a major disappointment. I'm happy for Le'Veon Bell, and now that he's added to that Chiefs offense, they become even more scarier, which is crazy because I actually did an episode, this offseason stating that Clyde Edwards-Helaire being added to the Kansas City Chiefs offense makes them flat out unstoppable and unfair. And now you pair Clyde Edwards-Helaire with Le'Veon Bell. Man, I feel bad for defensive coordinators. I really do. Okay, people, let me shift to the Dallas Cowboys. So the Dallas Cowboys got a big-time win versus the New York Football Giants, which actually is really not a big-time win just because the Giants are absolutely doo-doo. They've not been a good football team all year. But again, Dallas, they got the win. It was a divisional foe. But unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys lost their quarterback, Dak Prescott, for the remainder of the 2020 NFL season. Dak Prescott suffered a compound fracture and a dislocated right ankle in this past Sunday's win versus the New York Football Giants. He did go down, midway through that game, but the Cowboys, they were able to pull off a victory, so that's good for Dallas. But Dak Prescott's now out for the season, and I gotta say, man, I hope that Dak Prescott, gets a speedy recovery. I don't think Dak Prescott, is a bad human being. I've criticized Dak Prescott in the past for him not getting the job done as far as winning big games. I don't think Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback at the moment, but I've never said that Dak Prescott's a bad guy or a bad person. In fact, Dak Prescott, he's a very, very good, genuine human being. He's done a lot of great things for the Dallas community. A lot of his teammates speak very highly of him. He's a great leader. I love his intangibles. I never said his intangibles are lacking. I just think that I just don't think that he's overall as good as some Dallas fans think he is. But I truly wish that Dak Prescott gets a speedy recovery, and I hope he comes back strong and better than ever, no doubt about it. Prayers up for Dak Prescott. But I gotta say, man, this injury that Dak Prescott suffered, in my opinion at least, is going to cost Dak Prescott millions among millions of dollars. And I will tell you why. Dak Prescott this season decided to bet on himself. You want to know why? Because for all the crazy contract talks that the Cowboys have had with Dak Prescott, at some point within the last year and a half, the Cowboys reportedly offered Dak Prescott a contract that was worth $36 million per year. That's a pretty big, lofty contract. And Dak Prescott decided to turn that contract down. And listen, I have no problem with people deciding to bet on themselves. I don't have one problem with Dak Prescott saying, hey, I think I'm worth more than that. Let me go out there and perform and try and get even more money. I love the competitive desire that Dak Prescott presented right there. But unfortunately, Dak Prescott, he bet on himself, and he might have crashed and burned as far as his hopes of getting a contract that's worth more than $36 million per year. The one thing you could not question about Dak Prescott heading into the season was his ability to stay healthy. Well, now guess what? Now that's in question. Dak Prescott, he's going to miss the entire season. That is going to scare off some teams, I guarantee you. Keep this in mind, people. If Jerry Jones was reluctant to pay Dak Prescott when he was actually available to play all 4 of these years, he didn't miss a single start due to injury. This injury to Dak Prescott, that gives Jerry Jones another reason as to why he should not pay Dak Prescott, because Dak Prescott, he was very durable, from the jump, the last 4 years, but now he's injured. Jerry Jones could, talk to Dak Prescott's agent and be like, he's injured now. I don't know. And again, I'm just telling you what I think Jerry Jones' thought process might be, okay? And also, keep this in mind. Andy Dalton is the Dallas Cowboys' backup quarterback. And I got to ask people this question. What if Andy Dalton comes in and wins this division while Dak Prescott is sitting at home recovering from injury? What if that happens? And honestly, guys, it's very possible. Andy Dalton, he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but Andy Dalton, dating back to his days in Cincinnati, showed when you give him protection as far as his offensive line goes, if you give Andy Dalton a solid offensive line, if you give Andy Dalton a solid wide receiver core, if you give him a real run game, he can get you to the playoffs. Andy Dalton, for about a 4 to 5 year stretch in Cincinnati, was playing some really good football at the start of his career. When he had A.J. Green, some good wide receivers, a real run game, and a solid offensive line, Andy Dalton made the playoffs. And the way the NFC East is looking right now, it is not out the possibility that Dallas can still win this division. And keep in mind, the gap, honestly, between a prime Andy Dalton, because I don't think Andy Dalton is in his prime anymore. His prime was short-lived. But Andy Dalton in his prime, compared to Dak Prescott's first 4 seasons, is actually very, very comparable. There's not a whole lot of differences. Dak Prescott in his first 4 seasons had a 40-24 record and threw for 97 touchdown passes during a 4-year stretch. In Andy Dalton's first 4 seasons, you're looking at a guy that had a 40-23-1 record, which is very comparable to Dak Prescott, and he threw for 99 touchdown passes during that 4-year stretch, the first 4 years of his career. The stats are very similar, people. The gap between Dak Prescott and Andy Dalton at their best is not as wide as you think. I'm just saying, man. And if Andy Dalton goes out there and makes the playoffs in relief of Dak Prescott, this is going to validate Jerry Jones' level of thinking in regards to why he is reluctant to pay Dak Prescott. And also keep this in mind. This is very possible as well. What if Andy Dalton goes out there and plays bad? What if the Cowboys stink while Dak Prescott is hurt? What if they are picking top 10 in the draft at the end of the year? I seriously consider drafting a quarterback. If I'm picking anywhere from top 5 to top 10, if Justin Fields is on that board, I'm taking Justin Fields. If a stud quarterback is on the board or I can trade up for someone, I'm taking that quarterback. You want to know why? Because I guarantee you, if you put a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance in this Dallas Cowboys offense and give them these types of weapons, I didn't mention Trevor Lawrence just because I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be gone by the time the Cowboys are picking. And that leads me to say this. I believe that Dak Prescott is not going to be finishing his career with the Dallas Cowboys. I believe next year, Dak Prescott will be playing for another team. I just don't see Dak Prescott returning to Dallas. I just think that ship has sailed as far as the contract negotiations. I don't think Dak Prescott has much leverage anymore, because listen, man, like I mentioned earlier, even if Dallas goes out there and plays badly with Andy Dalton, guess what? If they're picking top 5 or top 10 in the draft, I guarantee you that Jerry Jones is going to want to draft another quarterback, just because if he was super sold on Dak Prescott, that deal would have gotten done already. It would have gotten done. Fair or unfair to Dak Prescott, the deal would have gotten done. You want to know why I say that? Because the Tennessee Titans, they got their deal done with Derrick Henry right at the deadline. The very last day, within hours of the contract deadline this past offseason, the Titans, it was reports that they would not get a deal done with Derrick Henry. Guess what? They made it happen. When you're truly sold on a quarterback or a player or an employee or anyone out there, or a chef that you're looking to hire for your new restaurant, if you're sold on someone with talent, you will make it happen regardless. If you love a girl, you will try to spend time with her regardless of your schedule. You will make it happen no matter what. It's amazing how people make time for the people that they believe in and the people they trust in and the people they care for and the people they love. And I'm sorry, I just don't think Jerry Jones has the love affair for Dak Prescott that he had for Tony Romo, a couple years ago when Tony Romo got a big-time contract despite, having a questionable record, despite not getting the job done from time to time. I'm just sorry. I don't see Jerry Jones pulling the trigger to sign Dak Prescott to a long-term deal. I honestly could see another franchise tag potentially coming for Dak Prescott. And unless Dak Prescott wants to take that, franchise tag or that short-term contract that's not worth the amount of money that he wanted in the first place, either Andy Dalton leads the Cowboys to the playoffs this year, and Jerry Jones sits back and says, Andy Dalton was a backup quarterback this year. We can win games without Dak Prescott. Let's try to find another quarterback. Or the Dallas Cowboys stink with Andy Dalton, and Jerry Jones says, Dak Prescott hasn't won a lot of big games. He's coming off a major injury. He's going to cost a lot of money. Maybe I need to draft a guy like Trey Lance or Justin Fields. I think I don't see a scenario where Dak Prescott stays in Dallas, and unfortunately, due to Dak Prescott's injury, I believe he's going to cost himself a lot of money, and it's very sad and unfortunate for Dak Prescott, but that's the harsh reality for his future in Dallas, in my opinion. I don't see Dak Prescott being a Dallas Cowboy for life because of this injury. Okay, everyone, I'm going to take a short break. When I return, we will talk about Drew Brees versus Aaron Rodgers. Who's the better all-time quarterback? I have actually already released this short clip episode on YouTube. So for those of you that just listen to me solely on podcasting platforms, you are missing out on YouTube just because you get to see my beautiful little face right here. You know what I'm saying? But either way, you guys are missing out if you're not subscribed on YouTube already. If you have already seen this episode on YouTube, don't worry. I, of course, have the timestamps in the description, so you can just skip this little segment if you want. But Drew Brees versus Aaron Rodgers coming right up. Don't go anywhere, people. I will be right back. What is going on, everyone? My name is Jamon McKinney once again, and I'm checking in with you guys right here. Be sure to subscribe to the Juice Alert if you have not subscribed already. Let me focus in on Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees in this segment. I've always had the firm belief that Aaron Rodgers has been a better all-time quarterback than Drew Brees. If I were to start a franchise, and if I were to pick a quarterback, I would pick Aaron Rodgers over Drew Brees. If I get a prime Drew Brees or a prime Aaron Rodgers, I'm taking a prime Aaron Rodgers all day, every day of the week over Drew Brees. Okay? Now, I do think that the race between Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, as far as being all-time great quarterbacks, is very, very close. Both only have one Super Bowl. Both have, dominated the NFL for a long time. And listen, man, let me just give you my top 6 quarterbacks of all time. Number 1 to me is Tom Brady. Tom Brady, 9 Super Bowl appearances. He's won 6 of them, 3 regular season MVPs. He's got a bunch of records in the regular season. He's the number 1 for me. Joe Montana, 4-0 in Super Bowls. He gets the number 2 spot for me. Peyton Manning, won 5 regular season MVPs. He was great. He's probably maybe the smartest quarterback of all time as far as processing defenses go. Peyton Manning was great. He's been to 4 Super Bowls, won 2 of them. John Elway to me is a number 4. He was a big arm quarterback that had a lot of talent, one of the greatest throwers of the football of all time. He's been to multiple Super Bowls and won multiple Super Bowls. And then at the number 5 spot, I have Aaron Rodgers, and right behind Aaron Rodgers on my all-time list is Drew Brees. Now, I am going to concede the fact that Drew Brees is going to be higher on the all-time list in mostly every single category than Aaron Rodgers, okay? Aaron Rodgers, he kind of got a late start to his career just because he had to sit for 3 years behind Brett Favre. He did have 2 seasons cut short due to injury. And for what it's worth, Drew Brees has played 7 more seasons than Aaron Rodgers. He's never really been injured. I'll give the longevity argument and the durability argument to Drew Brees. Drew Brees, you can have that argument right there. However, for what it's worth, Aaron Rodgers is already 7th all-time in touchdown passes. In fact, Aaron Rodgers was the fastest player in NFL history to get to 300 touchdown passes. Aaron Rodgers already is 12th all-time in yards. Aaron Rodgers has the highest career passer rating of all time, ahead of Drew Brees. Can we all concede the fact that if Aaron Rodgers plays about another 5 to 7 more years of football, and that's very realistic due to the quarterbacks playing, a lot longer these days. You look at Ben Roethlisberger, you look at Phil Rivers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. These guys are playing into their late 30s and early 40s. So I think that Aaron Rodgers is talented enough to play until he's about 42, maybe 43 years old. Okay? Aaron Rodgers is still going to be anywhere from top 5 to top 10 all time in pretty much every single statistical category. That's very impressive. And my biggest argument as to why Aaron Rodgers is a better all-time quarterback already than Drew Brees is simply because Aaron Rodgers has done more great things in a shorter period of time than Drew Brees. And Aaron Rodgers still has about 5 to 7 more years left of football, in my opinion. When I evaluate a player's legacy, there are two things that I care the most about. I care about the eye test, and I care about how good that player was at their peak. And not to mention, Aaron Rodgers, despite playing in 7 less seasons than Drew Brees, is one of 9 players to win multiple MVP awards. Drew Brees has 0 MVPs. And that begs the question, when was Drew Brees ever the best quarterback in football? Because when I look at Aaron Rodgers, I looked at a guy from 2011 to early 2017. I looked at that guy and I said, that's the best quarterback in football. I never felt that way about Drew Brees. And I don't want to hear the excuse that say, oh, Drew Brees was robbed of MVPs multiple times. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Drew Brees has played long enough to where if he was good enough to win an MVP, he would have won an MVP already, okay? And when we look at Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and even guys like Patrick Mahomes who've won an MVP, Russell Wilson might win MVP this year, Brett Favre, John Elway, Joe Montana, all these all-time great quarterbacks have won an MVP award. Aaron Rodgers is one of 9 players in NFL history to win multiple MVPs. Drew Brees has not gotten a single MVP award in his career. And I think at this time, we need to dive into the legacy of these players in the playoffs, because Drew Brees' playoff legacy has been vastly overrated throughout his entire career, simply because Drew Brees has missed the playoffs for nearly half of his career. Drew Brees has played in the NFL for 20 seasons. Okay, let's just assume that Drew Brees makes the playoffs this year. If the Saints make the playoffs this year, that will mark Drew Brees playing 20 seasons in the NFL and missing the playoffs 9 times in his career. Drew Brees has missed the playoffs 9 times in 20 seasons. That's not great. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers has started for 13 years in his career and has missed the playoffs only 3 times. And one of those seasons was his rookie season as far as being a starter. And another season was because Aaron Rodgers got hurt and his team was 4-1 before he got hurt. So I counted that, but really I shouldn't count that. So in hindsight, Aaron Rodgers, if you take away his rookie year and a season in which he got hurt in his prime, he only missed the playoffs 1 time. Okay? And it's not like Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees have had the greatest defenses in their career. Their organizations, for the most part, throughout their careers, have failed both of them as far as getting quality defenses to help them out. That's very fair, because they don't have the defenses that Tom Brady has had in his career, or Ben Roethlisberger has had in his career for the most part, okay? But see, here's the thing. Aaron Rodgers, he elevates the team that he has been dealt with. Drew Brees, for the most part, is not capable of carrying sorry roster to the playoffs consistently like Aaron Rodgers. In 2016, Aaron Rodgers carried the 31st ranked defense to the playoffs. In the NFC Championship game versus the Falcons, you know who was the cornerback that was guarding Julio Jones that game? His name was Ladarius Gunter. And I'm sure most of you people don't know who that is, because you shouldn't. Okay, he's an undrafted player that played in the league a couple years, and he was Green Bay's best cornerback in 2016, and that team got to the NFC Championship game on Aaron Rodgers' back. Aaron Rodgers consistently has carried teams with lack of a running game and teams that have had bad defenses to the playoffs. Drew Brees has had 8 seasons in his career where he's been 500 or worse. Aaron Rodgers has only had 2 of those seasons. Aaron Rodgers, for his career, has won 65.5% of his games. Drew Brees in New Orleans has won 61% of his games. And if you take into account the years in which he played with the Chargers, that percentage is at 59%. Drew Brees in his career is a 500 quarterback in the playoffs at 8-8. Aaron Rodgers is above 500 for his career in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers has been to more NFC title games than Drew Brees. And keep this in mind, people. Aaron Rodgers has never failed to score 20 points in a playoff game in his career, and he started in 18 career playoff games. Drew Brees cannot say the same about himself despite starting in less playoff games. In fact, Aaron Rodgers is 5th all-time in playoff touchdown passes, tied with Peyton Manning. The only difference is Peyton Manning played in 9 more career playoff games than Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has a higher passer rating in the playoffs for his career than Drew Brees. Aaron Rodgers has more career yards in the playoffs than Drew Brees. And Aaron Rodgers ultimately is just flat out the better all-time playoff quarterback in my opinion. He gets my team to the playoffs a lot more than Drew Brees has proven to get his team to the playoffs, okay? That's just a fact. What you have to understand about Aaron Rodgers is that at worst, this guy is one of the 3 most gifted throwers of the football of all time. And I say at worst because I believe Aaron Rodgers is the greatest thrower of the football of all time if we're just talking about talent, okay? If we're just taking into account deep ball accuracy, short and intermediate accuracy, how quick your release is, can you throw the ball with touch, timing, anticipation, can you process defenses, how strong your arm is, all that great stuff, the ability to throw a platform on the run. The only 2 quarterbacks really on Aaron Rodgers' level, in my opinion, is probably Dan Marino or Patrick Mahomes. And Dan Marino does not have a Super Bowl like Aaron Rodgers. And it's not like Aaron Rodgers has had the greatest, teams around him. It's not like Aaron Rodgers has always had a stacked roster around him. Okay, Dan Marino, he had his opportunity to win a Super Bowl. He didn't get it done. And while Patrick Mahomes is great and may be well on his way to passing Aaron Rodgers, I can't put Patrick Mahomes over Aaron Rodgers due to the fact that Aaron Rodgers has been dominating for 13 years and Patrick Mahomes has only dominated for about 2 years, okay? So Patrick Mahomes does not quite have the longevity, that Aaron Rodgers has had. He's not sustained the level of greatness that Aaron Rodgers has sustained. So for now, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers is the greatest thrower of the football of all time. And Brett Favre definitely deserves some consideration, but Brett Favre threw way too many interceptions and was way too inaccurate at times. So I cancel Brett Favre from that conversation. Some of the throws that Aaron Rodgers has made in his career are throws that Drew Brees just simply cannot even make in practice, people. And not to mention, Aaron Rodgers has the best touchdown to interception ratio of all time, and Aaron Rodgers has the highest passer rating in NFL history. Both of those things are higher than Drew Brees. The crazy thing is, there's an outside shot that Aaron Rodgers could finish his career with 500 touchdown passes and less than 100 interceptions. That's on the table. I don't think it's going to happen because as of right now, Aaron Rodgers has 373 touchdown passes to 84 interceptions as I record this episode today. But see, here's the thing, man. The fact that that is on the table to possibly happen is mind-boggling. Aaron Rodgers, for his career, is probably going to finish with 500 touchdown passes to a little bit over 100 interceptions. That's amazing. And as good as Drew Brees is for his career, he's got 239 interceptions. And Drew Brees does a good job of taking care of the football, but that's insane. Aaron Rodgers, his efficiency is off the charts, and this is not inflated numbers, people. Drew Brees, for most of his career, has played in a dome. And I'm not going to knock Drew Brees for playing in a dome, but for what it's worth, playing in snowy Green Bay in the frozen tundra, playing outside consistently, It's a lot harder to put up numbers rather than just playing in a dome, okay? I'm not quite so sure if Drew Brees' arm could hold up consistently playing in those conditions outside, because Drew Brees, he has a good arm, but not a great arm. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, that guy has an absolute cannon. That guy throughout his prime has had one of the 3 to 5 strongest arms in football consistently, okay? And that also begs a what-if question. People always say, what if Aaron Rodgers didn't get an opportunity to sit behind Brett Favre? That's a fair, assessment of Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he doesn't turn into the most efficient, the most accurate passer of all time. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers is a more accurate quarterback than Drew Brees. Okay? He's more accurate down the field than Drew Brees. People point to Drew Brees' completion percentage. Completion percentage is one of the most overrated stats I've ever seen. The reason why Drew Brees has a higher completion percentage than Aaron Rodgers is because Drew Brees runs a whole different offense than Aaron Rodgers. And Drew Brees plays the quarterback position at a much different level than Aaron Rodgers. Drew Brees is more of your check down guy. He's going to steal yards underneath. He will take what the defense gives him consistently. Aaron Rodgers, he more so likes to bomb the ball down the field, and he will throw the football deep consistently, okay, down the field, okay? Meanwhile, Drew Brees, it's a lot of underneath passes, a lot of short screen passes, and that's fine. But like I mentioned earlier, completion percentage is overrated. Do you know who is second all-time in completion percentage? Kirk Cousins. Do you know who's fourth all-time in completion percentage? Dak Prescott. Those guys are not great all-time quarterbacks. I'm just saying, man. Aaron Rodgers is throwing 50-yard Hail Marys right on the money to Richard Rodgers and Jeff Janis, and throwing darts down the field on the run to his left in the playoffs versus Dallas to Jared Cook on the sideline. And here's a final what-if question for you people out there. What if Drew Brees doesn't land with Sean Payton? Are we sure he's the same quarterback? Because before Sean Payton found his way to Drew Brees was a mess with the Chargers. Sean Payton is one of the smartest and most creative offensive minds in NFL history. Sean Payton has done a good job the last couple of years of hiding Drew Brees' limitations. I can only imagine what Sean Payton could do with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, a guy that can run outside the pocket and run for 10 to 15, 20 yards down the field sometimes if need be. A guy with a much stronger arm, a guy that can stretch the field a lot better than Drew Brees, a guy that's just flat out more talented than Drew Brees. See, Aaron Rodgers, for most of his career, has had a conservative play caller at times than Mike McCarthy. That's been Mike McCarthy's knock throughout his entire career, is that sometimes Mike McCarthy is a little bit conservative, okay? Meanwhile, Sean Payton, he's known for his aggressiveness. And also, people love to make excuses for Drew Brees and say, he never had enough weapons. He never had a good defense. First of all, like I said, Aaron Rodgers, he's carried sorry defenses throughout his entire career to the playoffs consistently. Meanwhile, Drew Brees, I disagree with the fact that Drew Brees has not had weapons. Marcus Colston, Michael Thomas, a prime Jimmy Graham, they're pretty good. Even guys like Kenny Stills and Brandon Cooks, they're serviceable players. Not to mention, he's had running backs like Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, Pierre Thomas, Mark Ingram, Darren Sproles, and Reggie Bush. That's a better running back core than what Aaron Rodgers has had. Aaron Rodgers' best running back has been Aaron Jones, and he just got Aaron Jones like 2 seasons ago. Aaron Jones just became nice 2 seasons ago. Aaron Rodgers, he did have Eddie Lacy for a little while, but Eddie Lacy ate his way out of the National Football League. Eddie Lacy got too fat and could no longer play in the NFL because he was too fat. That was Aaron Rodgers' other good running back. Aaron Rodgers has never had the run games that Drew Brees has had consistently. In fact, Drew Brees, you can make the argument that he's been protected better than Aaron Rodgers. Now, Drew Brees doesn't hold on to the ball as long as Aaron Rodgers, but here's an interesting stat. Drew Brees in 6 seasons throughout his entire career has not been sacked 20 times. Aaron Rodgers, for his career, has twice been the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. I don't think it's a debate, people. Drew Brees had better run games, and he's had better protection than Aaron Rodgers throughout his entire career. That's one thing the Saints have given Drew Brees. They've given him a good scheme, a very consistent run game, and a lot of protection, and above-average weapons. Stop making the excuses. And if Aaron Rodgers wins a second Super Bowl, the gap between him and Drew Brees will get even wider. So for all the reasons that I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is a better all-time quarterback than Drew Brees. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Love to hear what you guys have to say. Okay, people, enough talking about those two quarterbacks. I want to focus in on Matt LaFleur, the Green Bay Packers head coach, as we speak today. I believe that Matt LaFleur is slowly developing into being one of the best head coaches in the entire NFL. Last year, Matt LaFleur comes in. The Green Bay Packers go 13-3 in his first season being head coach. He obviously took over for Mike McCarthy. And listen, I just felt the Packers needed some type of change at head coach. I clearly felt that Mike McCarthy was holding that team back. And Matt LaFleur in his first season was very successful. You know, he won 13 games, but I wasn't completely sold on Matt LaFleur based on last season. You know, I felt that Matt LaFleur came in, he did some very good things. He came with some new ideas. He wasn't afraid to evolve and try new things. And like I said, the Packers, they just needed some type of change. And I understood the team's record was great, but I just felt that the team, you know, kind of was more so a product of the players they had, more so than Matt LaFleur's coaching. That was just my opinion based on what I saw last season. In fact, I felt that Matt LaFleur was actually one of the best head coaches last year on script. But when the Packers got off their script in the second half of games, they really struggled. And they really didn't have a second punch for San Francisco last year, particularly in the playoffs. So I kind of was saying, okay, Matt LaFleur, you come in, you change the culture, the players seem to respect you. I want to see you continue to elevate this team in your second year as head coach. I want to continue to see if you can evolve. I want to see if you're a legit head coach or if you're just a product of Aaron Rodgers and a very talented Green Bay Packers team. And last year, I think some of my criticism for Matt LaFleur was fair because last year, the Green Bay Packers ranked 14th as far as points per game in the NFL last year. They had the 18th ranked total offense in the NFL last year. Keep in mind, people, the Detroit Lions ranked higher in total offense last year than the Green Bay Packers, led by Aaron Rodgers, led by Aaron Jones, a very good running back, led by that good offensive line. The Detroit Lions, who, by the way, last season only won 3 games. That team had a better total offense than an Aaron Rodgers-led Green Bay Packers team. That was concerning to me, especially due to the fact that the Detroit Lions had Matthew Stafford miss several games last year due to injury. So I had my concerns about Matt LaFleur as a head coach. I recognize there were some bright moments for Matt LaFleur last year. He obviously outcoached Pete Carroll in the playoffs, versus Seattle, but versus the 49ers, he was not very good. Kyle Shanahan, his former mentor, absolutely bullied him. But this year, the Green Bay Packers, in my opinion, are a much better football team because of Matt LaFleur's coaching. Personally, I never bought into the whole narrative that Aaron Rodgers was washed up, that he was no longer elite. I actually had Aaron Rodgers ranked as the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL heading into the season. But listen, man, you can clearly tell this is a rejuvenated Green Bay Packers offense. This is not the Mike McCarthy offense of old. This is a whole new offense. And Aaron Rodgers, he's playing some of the best football that he's ever played in his career. Aaron Rodgers this year is back in the MVP conversation. Aaron Rodgers has been efficient. He's been on time. He's been in rhythm. And that has led Aaron Rodgers to having 0 turnover-worthy plays in the NFL this year, according to Pro Football Focus. Not to mention Aaron Rodgers, right now has thrown 13 touchdowns to 0 interceptions through 4 games played. And in some of these games, he's not even had Devontae Adams and Alan Lazard in the lineup. And Matt LaFleur is scheming these guys open. They're easy completions for Aaron Rodgers. This offense is a well-oiled machine. It looks very similar to when Sean McVay led the Los Angeles Rams to the Super Bowl a couple years ago when Jared Goff was putting up MVP type numbers. This offense is looking very similar to that Los Angeles Rams offense where Jared Goff was playing well. You had Todd Gurley at running back, very similar to Aaron Jones at running back. Jared Goff was spreading the ball around to his playmakers. Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't matter if it's Robert Tonyan, it doesn't matter if it's Jay Sternberger, Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Alan Lazard. He's making all these guys look good, okay? And Matt LaFleur, for his career so far, has a 17-3 record through 20 games. That's the second best record in NFL history since 1930. And I've always looked at certain traits when evaluating how good a head coach is. First of all, I look at the presence you bring to the table. Do you bring a presence to that locker room? The players respect Matt LaFleur. Are you a good decision maker? I think Matt LaFleur is a pretty good decision maker. Are you organized? I think Matt LaFleur is much better off script this year. The Packers have been one of the best second half teams in the NFL this year. Can you make adjustments? I see the adjustments from Matt LaFleur. Are you aware of your roster limitations? I think Matt LaFleur has a very good understanding of what his players do well and what they don't do well. He's gotten the most out of these guys. And last but not least, do you know X's and O's? And Matt LaFleur, he's shown off how smart he is as a head coach. So again, obviously we know Aaron Rodgers is great. Obviously we know Devontae Adams is great. Obviously we know the Packers defense is better than in years past, led by Jair Alexander, who's playing great, led by Kenny Clark, led by the Smith brothers coming off the edge. But ultimately, one of the biggest reasons why the Packers look like Super Bowl 55 favorites early in the season, in my opinion, is because their head coach, Matt LaFleur, has evolved. He's taken the next step, and slowly but surely, Matt LaFleur is becoming one of the best head coaches in the entire NFL. By the end of the year, Matt LaFleur might be a top 10 head coach, hands down. And if he can win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers in his second season as a head coach, that would be very impressive. And ultimately, I love what I've seen from Matt LaFleur as Green Bay Packers head coach in his second season working with Aaron Rodgers. The Green Bay Packers, they're a legit football team, not only because of the talent on their roster, but because Matt LaFleur is a pretty darn good head coach. Give him some credit, people. He deserves it. So as I mentioned earlier, the bad news for the Dallas Cowboys is Dak Prescott, their starting quarterback, is now done for the season. However, the good news for the Dallas Cowboys is this. The good news for the Cowboys is their season is not quite over just yet. I believe that Andy Dalton is more than capable of leading the Dallas Cowboys to the playoffs. I think that Andy Dalton, with this supporting cast, is capable of winning the NFC East in 2020. Now, are the Dallas Cowboys going to make the playoffs? Maybe, maybe not. Personally, in my opinion, my gut tells me no, just because in the offseason, I picked the Dallas Cowboys to miss the playoffs. I said they were the most overrated team in all of football. I said that defense is absolutely doo-doo. And so far, check that box off right there. That defense has been absolutely god-awful. The offensive line, I said, was aging a little bit. I did not trust Dak Prescott to go out there and beat good teams in big games. Dak Prescott, the last 3 years, his record versus winning teams has not been that good. And ultimately, I wasn't a huge believer in Mike McCarthy. So as of right now, by the skin of my teeth, I'm going to hang on to my prediction that the Philadelphia Eagles will win the NFC East, but that does not mean the Dallas Cowboys will not be in the NFC East race till the very end. The Dallas Cowboys still have a chance to win this division, and I will tell you why. Despite Dak Prescott, missing time, they still have a chance, and I'll tell you why. The NFC East this year is terrible. I talked about how Philadelphia is going to still win this division. Boy, oh boy, am I hanging on to that prediction for dear life. Because the Philadelphia Eagles, they've not been a good football team up to this point. Now, I expect Philadelphia to eventually turn around, but at this point, it might be wishful thinking, people. The Philadelphia Eagles are 1-3-1 on the year, and this coming Sunday, they have to face Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm sorry, the Ravens, they do have their flaws as a football team, but they are a significantly better roster than the Philadelphia Eagles as of right now. And also, they have a better head coach. Doug Peterson, I like him, but I'll take John Harbaugh over Doug Peterson. And the Philadelphia Eagles, they blew a 17-point lead to Washington, who's been a one-win team this year. They got bodied by the Rams at home, and they nearly lost at home to the Bengals. They tied with the Cincinnati Bengals, a team last year that was picking number 1 overall in the draft. And also, you look at the other teams in the Dallas Cowboys division, you look at Washington. I mean, who's Washington's quarterback? Kyle Allen? I'm not scared of Kyle Allen. Alex Smith, he can't move anymore. I like Dwayne Haskins. I still think Dwayne Haskins can become a franchise quarterback. I think that he's been, kind of ruined by a poor organization, that being Washington. I believe in Dwayne Haskins, but does Ron Rivera believe in Dwayne Haskins? Does that coaching staff believe in Dwayne Haskins? I'm not so sure. And not to mention on offense, you're looking at Antonio Gibson, good player. Terry McLaurin, good player. At wide receiver, good running back and decent number 1 wide receiver. But outside of those two guys, they really don't have a second or third punch. Their offense has been very bad this year. Very inconsistent, not a dynamic offense. And the Giants, they've just been bad. They're a team devoid of talent. And they have a rookie head coach in Joe Judge. The Giants, they're not very good. Dallas, on paper, probably has the most talented team in this division at the moment. And the thing you have to realize about the Dallas Cowboys is this. They control their own destiny. Because I'm looking at the Cowboys schedule. They get Washington twice. They get Philadelphia twice. They get Minnesota coming off a bye week. And Minnesota has not been a good football team this year. They play the Bengals, who are not a good football team. They play the 49ers down the stretch, who have not been a good football team. And they get the Giants once again. That they can pile up a lot of wins. There are going to be a lot of games that Dallas is still going to be favored in. So in reality, the Dallas Cowboys, they're still well alive right now. And by the way, Andy Dalton, in my opinion, is more than capable of winning games with this Dallas Cowboys roster. Andy Dalton is not the greatest quarterback in the world, but I believe Andy Dalton can win games with this supporting cast. You look at Ezekiel Elliott, star running back. The Dallas Cowboys will be able to run the football effectively. They've got a solid offensive line. You look at Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. Andy Dalton has solid targets to throw the football to. Actually, not just solid targets, well above average targets. Very, very good targets. Star wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. They're really good. And while Andy Dalton is not the greatest athlete in the world, while Andy Dalton is well past his prime, when given time to throw, he's pretty accurate. He's a pretty smart quarterback. He's experienced. And a couple years ago in Cincinnati, like I mentioned earlier, when his roster was pretty good, when he had good wide receivers, when he had a good run game, when he had protection as far as his offensive line goes, when he had talent around him, he made the playoffs consistently. So don't sleep on Andy Dalton and the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys season is not over. Andy Dalton is more than capable of winning this division based on the supporting cast that he has at his disposal. And the NFC East, it's been so bad this year that anything can happen. Okay, let me talk about the Chargers right here. So this past week, the Los Angeles Chargers fell to the New Orleans Saints in overtime, 30-27. I learned a couple of things from this game. I learned in this game that once again, Justin Herbert is an absolute stud as we speak today. I'm not going to sit here and label Justin Herbert the next elite quarterback, the next great quarterback. Not saying he's going to win you a bunch of Super Bowls, Chargers fans, but this guy has some juice to his game. This guy has some special stuff. He's got some special sauce. He's better than I thought he would be. I was not completely sold on that pick when he was, selected out of Oregon, but he checks a lot of boxes. He's got the size. He's got the big-time arm. He throws a very good deep ball, very catchable ball as well. He's got mobility. He's very tough in the pocket. The Saints came after Justin Herbert this past week. He kept getting up time and time again and kept delivering strikes down the field. He checks off a lot of boxes. The Chargers, they've got a very good young quarterback that's, going to get better and better as he continues to start and get more experience in the NFL. I like what I've seen from Justin Herbert. Also, I was not impressed with the Saints. The Saints, to me, are just a team that is not a very complete football team. The defense is not very good. I don't think Drew Brees is a great quarterback anymore. He's still a very good quarterback, but I don't think that Drew Brees has that same, stuff that he had a couple years ago. I do believe that his arm has deteriorated. The Saints defense is just not that good. The Saints, they'll probably make the playoffs, but I don't know if they're much of a threat come playoff time. But let me crucify the Chargers a little bit right here because they deserve to be crucified. They deserve to be talked down upon right now because the Chargers, they had a 20-3 lead in that game. And Michael Barkley blew the Chargers' opportunity to win that football game this past Monday night. I understand there was a lead blown in this game. The Chargers were up 20-3 in this game at one point, but the Saints, they mounted a little comeback. They tied the game, but guess what? Justin Herbert makes an incredible throw to Mike Williams, and Mike Williams does the rest. Mike Williams mosses 2 defenders, and he puts the Chargers in position to kick a game-winning field goal, and Michael Barkley missed the field goal. Not to mention earlier in the game, he missed an extra point, and that game went to overtime. Michael Barkley is a huge reason why the Chargers lost that game. And as I speak today, I am officially labeling the Los Angeles Chargers the Dallas Cowboys of the West Coast. They are the Dallas Cowboys of the West Coast. The Chargers, they're the Dallas Cowboys of the West Coast. This team continues to disappoint and flame out in the biggest moments consistently, no matter how much talent they have. What can go wrong will go wrong for the Chargers. I'm convinced the Chargers might be cursed as a franchise. Very similar to the Dallas Cowboys because the last 23 years, the Dallas Cowboys have 3 playoff wins in a 23-year stretch. And people keep telling me they're America's team, but I don't see the results. But either way, keep in mind, this is a Chargers franchise that chose Phillip Rivers over Drew Brees. Keep that in mind, people. They chose Phillip Rivers over Drew Brees. And while Phillip Rivers has had a good long career, while he might get some Hall of Fame votes, Phillip Rivers is not one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You know, he's a borderline Hall of Famer right now. He might be a Hall of Famer, might not be. I'll let you guys decide that. But Drew Brees, he's an absolute legend. He's arguably a top 5 quarterback of all time. And Phillip Rivers, we're left with a 5-6 record in the playoffs for his career. A lot of solid seasons, but a lot of shortcomings from Phillip Rivers. He never's gotten over the hump. In fact, in 2018, the Chargers arguably had the best team in all of football, and they got shellacked by the Patriots. And in 2007, Phillip Rivers, unfortunately, in the playoffs versus the Patriots, you know, he had a torn ACL, and he was very hobbled in that game. And if Phillip Rivers were healthy for that game, the Chargers could have beaten the Patriots. That game was very competitive, but unfortunately it did not happen. And not to mention Phillip Rivers, when he was back with the Chargers, he didn't beat Tom Brady once. He's never beaten Tom Brady in his career. That's crazy, people. The Chargers, in my opinion, are just a team that can never get it together. They just historically have always had something off with their team. They just have. And since 2017, the Chargers are 12-19 in one-score games. What can go wrong will go wrong. The Chargers continue to do Chargers things. They continue to miss field goals. They continue to shoot themselves in the foot. And they continue to blow leads. And they continue to be the Chargers. It never seems like the Chargers can get the right head coach. It always seems like the roster is not quite complete enough. And it even seems like when they get a generational talent in Derwin James, it seems like the guy can't stay healthy. Derwin James has been a very injury-prone player up to this point in his career. He's a very dynamic player when he's on the field. He's one of the best safeties in the entire NFL. You know, he's great when he's on the field, but the problem is he's never on the field because he can't stay healthy. I'm officially labeling the Chargers the Dallas Cowboys of the West Coast. I'm convinced there's a black cat running around the Chargers franchise, and unfortunately for Chargers fans, their team just can't seem to get it right. They're the Dallas Cowboys of the West Coast. So during the offseason, I picked the Chicago Bears to go 8-8. I thought the team was, not that great. I felt that they were very average. I did not expect the offensive line to play very well. I didn't think that Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles had enough weapons on the outside for them to succeed. Matt Nagy, he had a good rookie season as a head coach, but his sophomore season as a head coach, he kind of took a step back. There were some things I didn't like. I just wasn't really feeling Chicago this year. I felt that Detroit would actually be a little bit better this year. I felt that Minnesota would kind of flame out, but they would be a little bit better than Chicago this year. And obviously, I picked that bad man Aaron Rodgers to go out there and win the division. And so far, he's making me look like a genius. But I think I might have whiffed on the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears right now are a 4-1 football team heading into week 6. And they got a big-time win versus Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this past Thursday night. And I gotta say, man, Chicago's better than I thought. And I understand that Tampa Bay didn't have, Leonard Fournette playing. I understand that Chris Godwin didn't play, but I still have to give Chicago a lot of credit, because I wasn't completely sold on their first couple of wins. I saw a win versus the Lions in which DeAndre Swift dropped a touchdown pass that would have won the Lions the game. I saw a win versus the Giants at home where the Giants dominated them in the second half. They barely squeaked out that victory. The Falcons game, the Falcons, they turned into the Falcons. Chicago just pretty much was handed the victory because the Falcons are a joke. And the Colts, they bodied the Chicago Bears at home. And while I don't think Chicago's a great team, meaning I don't think they're a Super Bowl caliber team, I think this team is a playoff team. I really do. They're 4-1, and I think that win versus Tampa Bay was a pretty convincing win. Despite the injuries that Tampa Bay had, the Buccaneers, they have a high-powered offense, and they held that offense, the Chicago Bears defense, I should say, the Chicago Bears defense held that offense to 19 points. Tampa's a good team. Tom Brady, pretty good quarterback. Wide receiver core, pretty good. Tight end core, pretty good. Solid offensive line. And the Buccaneers so far this season have had a top 10 defense. But the Bears, they got to win at home versus a very good Buccaneers team. And I think Chicago's a playoff team. Why do I say that, though? Well, let's keep this in mind. Last year, Mitch Trubisky was holding the Chicago Bears back. And guess what? That team last year still found a way to go 8-8. And while Nick Foles has his problems as a quarterback, he's much better than Trubisky right now. He really is. The thing about Nick Foles is he's not afraid to take shots down the field. He's not afraid to take chances. He's got a much better arm than Mr. Trubisky. He's a better decision maker, and he's much more consistent than Mr. Trubisky. And in that Atlanta Falcons game where Mr. Trubisky got pulled from the game because he threw a pick six and wasn't playing up to par, wasn't playing very well, when the Chicago Bears inserted Nick Foles into that starting lineup, it just seemed like everything clicked for that Bears team. He came in and he threw 3 touchdown passes in the second half and led them to victory. And not to mention, Chicago, they still got that defense that's pretty good, man. They're top 10 in pretty much almost every single category. Third down percentage, forcing turnovers, points per game allowed, yards per game allowed. Chicago is atop of a lot of these categories. They're at least somewhere from the top 5 to top 10 in mostly every important defensive category right now. I mean, Khalil Mack, he's one of the best defensive ends in the entire NFL. Akeem Hicks is a very underrated defensive tackle. Eddie Jackson, Fuller in that secondary, they're very good. And Matt Nagy, he's a pretty creative head coach. He's creative enough for me. I didn't like some things that I saw from Matt Nagy last year, but Matt Nagy, I think that he's creative enough as a head coach. He mixes up enough stuff to where I say, okay, Matt Nagy, I like what you're doing. And their wide receiver core is actually not that bad. You look at Allen Robinson, you look at Darnell Mooney, you look at Cordero Patterson, you look at Ted Ginn Jr., that's a decent wide receiver core. I don't know if Ted Ginn Jr. is going to return this week or not. He's been dealing with some injuries, but the wide receiver core is actually pretty good. It's actually underrated in my opinion. And the offensive line, that was a big question mark that I had for Chicago heading into the season. The offensive line is actually playing pretty well. It's not an elite unit, but it's an above average unit. And honestly, whether you think Chicago is legit or not, guess what? In my opinion, they're going to pile up a lot of wins. You want to know why? Because their schedule is actually very favorable the rest of the way, man. I look at some of these games playing at Carolina. Carolina's better than I thought, but I think that Chicago can get that win. Carolina, they're a decent team, but I think Chicago has a better roster than Carolina. At Carolina, they can potentially win that game. The Saints, did you see the Saints versus the Chargers? This past Monday night, the Saints have not looked like a legit football team this season. Chicago, they can beat the Saints. They get Minnesota twice. Minnesota does not look good this year. They play Detroit once again. They play the Jaguars, and they play the Texans this year. Those are all very, very winnable games for Chicago. So all I'm saying, man, is look, I think that now that Chicago has moved on from Mitch Trubisky, they've at least got serviceable quarterback play from Nick Foles. Nick Foles is not going to knock your socks off. He's not going to go out there and wow you a bunch of times, but Nick Foles can get the job done. And that is really all Chicago needs. They just need an accurate distributor that at times can push the football down the field when need be. And not to mention, like I said, that defense is pretty good. And Matt Nagy, he's a better head coach than I thought. So again, Chicago, I believe that they are a playoff team now that Nick Foles is their starting quarterback going forward. The Chicago Bears look like a playoff team, and they are a playoff team because Nick Foles is now their quarterback, like I mentioned earlier. Well, Chicago Bears fans, I just had a very good conversation with you guys during the last segment, but this conversation is going to be ugly for you guys because Mitch Trubisky is now officially probably going to be on the bench for the remainder of the season for the Chicago Bears. I don't think Nick Foles is going to give up that starting job, barring injury, unless Nick Foles gets injured. I don't think Mitch Trubisky sees any more snaps this season with the Chicago Bears being their starting quarterback. And as I speak today, heading into week 6 of the 2020 NFL season, Mitch Trubisky is officially a bust. He's officially a bust, people. See, here's the thing about Mitch Trubisky. You can never say the Chicago Bears did not go out there and give Mitch Trubisky every single ample opportunity to become a legit franchise quarterback. Chicago gave Mitch Trubisky 4 years to go out there and try to prove to them that he was worth that number 2 overall pick. And while he probably was never going to be worth the number 2 overall pick, just because, the Chicago Bears passed on Deshaun Watson and they passed on Patrick Mahomes, 2 top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. As we speak today, they have developed into that. Deshaun Watson is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the NFL, and Patrick Mahomes is arguably the best player in the entire NFL. And while Mitch Trubisky is going to probably finish his career in Chicago with a winning record, that's not reflecting on Mitch Trubisky being a great quarterback. Mitch Trubisky, time in and time out, was holding the Chicago Bears back. And honestly, I didn't really understand drafting Mitch Trubisky from this perspective. Keep in mind, Chicago is a very windy city. It's named the Windy City for a reason. Mitch Trubisky has an average NFL arm. Didn't the Chicago Bears, scouting team realize that when he was at North Carolina, that this guy has an average arm, that sometimes when he has to throw the ball in windy weather, that ball can flutter? It's something I took into account. It's something that I said, I don't think that arm can work in Chicago. And Mitch Trubisky, he's just not been a good quarterback up to this point. He doesn't like to take risks down the field. When he does take shots down the field, he's often missing open wide receivers. He's just not very accurate. He's got an average arm. He's a bad decision maker. And keep in mind, people, Mitch Trubisky, for his career, has had above average weapons, a very creative head coach in Matt Nagy, and a top 5 defense for most of his career. Chicago has done everything right the last couple of seasons as far as scouting players, building up a very good roster. They've done all those things right except find a franchise quarterback. I like Nick Foles. I think that Nick Foles could come in this year and lead Chicago to the playoffs, but long term, Nick Foles is not the answer. He's just not. I don't think Nick Foles is the answer. Maybe he is. Maybe he proves me wrong, but I don't see it. And keep in mind, Mitch Trubisky was the number 2 overall pick. When you think of a number 2 overall pick, you at bare minimum are hoping you get a franchise quarterback. Like, for example, the Cleveland Browns. While Baker Mayfield, may not wow you, while he may not be as dynamic as a Patrick Mahomes or a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield doesn't scream number one overall pick. But at least Baker Mayfield's a franchise quarterback. Trubisky's not a franchise quarterback. He's not even a starting quarterback anymore right now. In my opinion, he's just not. What starting quarterback in the NFL right now would you legitimately take over Mitch Trubisky? Are you going to take Kyle Allen? That's a toss-up, man. Are you going to take Dwayne Haskins? I'd rather build around Dwayne Haskins and coach him up, than Mitch Trubisky. Dwayne Haskins has a better arm than Mitch Trubisky. I think that Dwayne Haskins got a raw deal in Washington. Would you take Sam Darnold over Mitch Trubisky? I know I would. Would you take Daniel Jones over Mitch Trubisky? I personally would. Would you take Gardner Minshew over Mitch Trubisky? Personally, I would. Would you take Phillip Rivers over Mitch Trubisky? As bad as Phillip Rivers has looked this year, I would take Phillip Rivers over Mitch Trubisky right now today if I'm trying to go out there and win football games. Phillip Rivers, despite being a washed-up quarterback that cannot move at all in the pocket, he was never a great athlete. He's a terrible athlete now because he just flat out is a straight-up statue in that pocket. I would take Phillip Rivers over Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky is a bust. It's no other way to put it, people. And like I mentioned earlier, when you're talking about a number 2 overall pick, you think of a guy that is going to change your franchise. And Mitch Trubisky, he's not done that. And the Chicago Bears look even more bad because when it was obvious they should have taken Deshaun Watson, they didn't take him. I've always given the Chicago Bears somewhat of a semi-pass for passing on Patrick Mahomes just because a lot of people did not think Patrick Mahomes would pan out. At the time, a lot of people were hesitant to pick Big 12 quarterbacks. A lot of people felt that the Big 12 system, the air raid offense, the Big 12 concepts did not translate well to the NFL. So listen, Chicago, you obviously made the wrong pick, but okay, a lot of teams whiffed on Patrick Mahomes. You whiffed as well. Fine, we'll give you a pass. There was no excuse to not take Deshaun Watson. As I've said in years past, the 2017 NFL draft reminded me of the 1984 NBA draft when Michael Jordan did not go number 1 overall. I'm going to compare Michael Jordan to Patrick Mahomes just because right now, if Patrick Mahomes continues on the trajectory that he's on, he's going to be the Michael Jordan of football. Okay? He's already won a Super Bowl, already won an MVP, two years as a starter. The sky's the limit for Patrick Mahomes. So you think about Michael Jordan back in that draft. Why do people not bash the Houston Rockets for taking Akeem Olajuwon? They don't bash the Rockets for taking Akeem Olajuwon just because Hakeem Olajuwon won titles. He won MVPs. He never reached Michael Jordan's level. But no one ever bashed the Houston Rockets completely for taking Akeem Olajuwon because Akeem Olajuwon, they recognized he's a champion. He's a great player. One of the 10 to 15 greatest players of all time. He may not be the GOAT, but he's still great. That's the same thing with Deshaun Watson. If the Chicago Bears missed on Patrick Mahomes, a lot of teams will say, okay, Patrick Mahomes, he went to Kansas City, he got Andy Reid to be his head coach, fine, we whiffed, okay? But guess what? Deshaun Watson is still pretty good. Deshaun Watson is one of the more dynamic players in all of football. Deshaun Watson is a very good quarterback. You can sell Deshaun Watson to your fan base. You can't sell Mitch Trubisky to your fan base, especially when you passed on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Deshaun Watson was the safer pick. He would definitely be a great fit in Chicago. Deshaun Watson will most certainly turn the Chicago Bears into a Super Bowl caliber team year in and year out. I mean, a couple years ago, the Chicago Bears won 12 games with Mitch Trubisky starting the entire season. You mean to tell me they're going to do worse with Deshaun Watson as their quarterback, with that defense, with Allen Robinson at wide receiver, with Matt Nagy dialing up offensive plays for not Patrick Mahomes, for Deshaun Watson? you'd be kidding yourself if you think Deshaun Watson couldn't make things work in Chicago. He would play very well in Chicago. He'd be the perfect fit for Chicago outside of maybe having a little bit of a weaker arm, as Deshaun Watson doesn't have a cannon for an arm, but his arm is better than Trubisky's arm. I think Deshaun Watson's arm won't flutter as much in the wind as Trubisky's does. I think Deshaun Watson has a stronger arm than people give him credit for. Not to mention, Deshaun Watson can run the football better than Mitch Trubisky. He's a better athlete than Mitch Trubisky. He's just flat out a better player than Trubisky, and we're not even going to start with Patrick Mahomes because that's a laughable comparison between Mitch Trubisky and Patrick Mahomes. And actually, I liked Patrick Mahomes when he's coming out of Texas Tech. I understood that Patrick Mahomes had work to do, but I saw Patrick Mahomes' potential, and I said, this guy's a better prospect than Trubisky. I just didn't see what the Chicago Bears saw in Mitch Trubisky. And unfortunately, Mitch Trubisky, as we speak today, is an NFL bust. And unfortunately, Ryan Pace and that organization, they're going to have to watch Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson dominate the NFL for the next decade. And they're going to think to themselves, what if? What if we were not so dumb? What if we would have saw what other people saw in Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes? What if we didn't draft Mitch Trubisky? Because as I speak today, Mitch Trubisky is officially an NFL bust. No other way around it. So the Houston Texans this past week fired head coach and general manager Bill O'Brien. And I honestly saw this coming at some point. I actually said during the offseason that Bill O'Brien should have been fired after the Kansas City Chiefs debacle in the playoffs versus Patrick Mahomes, in which the Houston Texans lost that game 51-31. I mean, that's just an embarrassing loss. And I am so happy that Bill O'Brien is officially out the building for the Houston Texans. This was long overdue, people. Like I said earlier, Bill O'Brien, he should have been fired a long time ago. He overstayed his welcome in Houston. Now, why did Bill O'Brien fail as a head coach with the Texans? Why did he disappoint from time to time? Because honestly, the fact that the Houston Texans did not get to an AFC title game, not one time, that's underachieving in Houston. It just is. It's underachieving. Why did he fail? Well, I think that Bill O'Brien sort of became Mike McCarthy 2.0 over time. And Bill O'Brien, he won a playoff game in the past with Brock Osweiler being his starting quarterback. Brock Osweiler, not a good quarterback. Bill O'Brien, he's not an awful head coach. The only problem is there comes a point in time where you just need to switch things up. You just need to switch things up from time to time. And Bill O'Brien, his system got stale. He didn't evolve as a head coach. And he kind of became Mike McCarthy 2.0, where once he got a legit franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson, he became way too reliant on Deshaun Watson's talents. And Bill O'Brien did not change up his game enough as a head coach. He did not evolve enough. Very similar to how Mike McCarthy just solely relied on Aaron Rodgers' talent to take him over the top. He felt that if I have Aaron Rodgers, I can do no wrong. That's the same thing with Bill O'Brien. He felt that because he had Deshaun Watson, he could do no wrong. And the team continued to disappoint, not from lack of talent. The talent was there in Houston. Houston had good defenses. They had a very talented wide receiver core last year. Deshaun Watson's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL as far as I'm concerned. At worst, a top 10 quarterback. He's not the problem. The problem with Houston the last couple of years as to why they've disappointed has been due to terrible coaching, bad coaching. Since 2014, keep this in mind, people, every single team in the AFC South, which is the Houston Texans division, has made an AFC title game except the Houston Texans. That's pretty sad. The Colts have made an AFC title game since 2014. The Jaguars have made one. And what's the other team? It was the Colts, the Jaguars. Oh, the Titans last year. The Titans, they made the AFC title game as well. With the amount of talent that Houston has had on their roster the last 5 to 6 seasons, That's a major disappointment. It just is. And Bill O'Brien, his first career, he's 2-4 in the playoffs. His average playoff loss is by over 21 points, which tells you that he's losing by over 3 scores on a per average basis, per game average basis. He's losing by 3 scores. It's just bad, man. And Bill O'Brien, he's not a very good high leverage decision maker. He doesn't make enough adjustments. He's just not very organized. But also, Bill O'Brien took on the ownership of being the general manager of the Houston Texans. And Bill O'Brien being so wrapped up in general manager duties, I truly believe that it hurt his ability to be a great head coach once again. He never was a great head coach, but it hurt his ability to be a head coach that evolves over time. It hurt him because there were reports that Bill O'Brien wasn't even a part of the offensive install for his team until the very last minute because he was so wrapped up in general manager duties. He would actually roll in on Saturdays, change the entire game plan the day before a game because NFL teams usually play on Sundays, okay? And that's a big reason why Houston usually started off games slow because when your head coach is rolling in on Saturdays and changing the entire game plan the day before you go out there and play teams on Sundays, that's a problem for your team. And this guy, Bill O'Brien, traded away DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. That was one of the worst trades I've ever seen. And listen, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, they're good wide receivers. They're not DeAndre Hopkins. This offense this year in Houston has suffered because DeAndre Hopkins is no longer there. A number one wide receiver that can go out there and beat Marlon Humphrey, that can go out there and beat Tre'Davious White, that can go out there and beat the best cornerback on the opposing team, that's a very valuable asset. And I don't think Bill O'Brien really got that memo. And the amount of talent that has come and gone from Houston's roster the last couple of seasons is kind of mind-boggling to me. Jadeveon Clowney, Dwayne Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyrann Mathieu. These guys are no longer on the team. And these guys are thriving in other cities and with other franchises. So, again, Bill O'Brien, he needed to get fired. I'm happy that he's gotten fired finally just because he had done way more damage than good for Houston's franchise. So many poor decisions as general manager. So many badly coached football games. So many times his team was unprepared. So many times the Houston Texans underperformed because of lack of great coaching. And ultimately, Bill O'Brien overstayed his welcome in Houston. Firing Bill O'Brien was the right decision for Houston. Okay, let's talk about Deshaun Watson because, like I mentioned earlier, Bill O'Brien is no longer head coach for the Houston Texans. He's been fired. And I gotta say, man, Bill O'Brien getting fired as general manager and head coach for the Houston Texans could end up being the best thing to ever happen to Deshaun Watson in his NFL career. I will tell you why. A big reason why the Houston Texans the last couple of seasons have kind of flamed out and disappointed is because they were a football team that became way too Deshaun Watson dependent. More times than not, the Houston Texans would just let Deshaun Watson run around, make plays, and they said, okay, let's see what happens. It was Deshaun Watson or bust. And head coach Bill O'Brien, time in and time out, failed to elevate Deshaun Watson's game as a quarterback. And when you look at the very successful teams in the NFL these days, let's talk about when Bill Belichick still had Tom Brady with the Patriots. You want to know why the Patriots won multiple Super Bowls? They won multiple Super Bowls because the Patriots did not solely rely on Tom Brady's greatness. Of course, Tom Brady needed to be clutch, needed to be great to go out there and win those Super Bowls. But the Patriots, they had a legit running game. They had a legit defense. and they had a head coach that was willing to evolve, that was very creative, and was a defensive mastermind in Bill Belichick. Even the Kansas City Chiefs this past year, you look at them. Patrick Mahomes was not very good for 3.5 quarters in the Super Bowl. But you want to know why? You want to know why Patrick Mahomes was able to win that Super Bowl? He was able to win that Super Bowl because his team was not solely dependent upon him. That defense kept the Kansas City Chiefs in that game, and they kept it close in the fourth quarter and said, hey, Patrick Mahomes, we've got the game close in the fourth quarter. You need to go out there and make some magic. You need to go out there and make magic happen and get us over the top. We've gotten you to this point. Take us there, Patrick Mahomes. The Kansas City Chiefs were a team that shut down Derrick Henry in the AFC title game. People forget that the Kansas City Chiefs last year, when Patrick Mahomes went down due to injury, that team was able to beat the Minnesota Vikings at home. The Minnesota Vikings last year had one of the best rosters in the entire NFL. They were a playoff team. And without Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs beat the Minnesota Vikings. They almost beat the Green Bay Packers last year, a 13-win football team without Patrick Mahomes. You want to know why? Because they actually have a system put in place, and as great as Patrick Mahomes is, the Kansas City Chiefs are not solely dependent upon Patrick Mahomes. How many times have we seen the Pittsburgh Steelers go out there and support Ben Roethlisberger? In fact, Ben Roethlisberger a couple years ago, when he won his first ever Super Bowl, he had the worst quarterback rating in Super Bowl history. Going back to Tom Brady won a Super Bowl scoring 13 points in that game. The Rams only scored 3. I think that if the Houston Texans can hit on their next head coach, I think we're going to see a lot of playoff success from Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson gets the right head coach for him, and Houston becomes a team that does not solely depend on his greatness to be successful, if they get a real CEO in the building to really manage things, or if they get a real general manager, then guess what? I think Houston can do some special things as a franchise. And I believe that Deshaun Watson not only is going to dominate, I believe one day Deshaun Watson can potentially become the best quarterback in the NFL. I can see some MVPs on Deshaun Watson's resume in the future. I can see potentially Deshaun Watson winning a Super Bowl for the Houston Texans if he gets the right head coach for him. But it will all depend on if Houston can hit on their next head coach. If Houston can hit on their next head coach, I truly believe that will be the best thing that's ever happened to Deshaun Watson's career, because the NFL, it's all about quarterback and head coach, okay? The Houston Texans, they've got a darn good quarterback. Now they need to find the right head coach for Deshaun Watson. And they also need to get a real general manager in there that won't trade away a bunch of draft picks and that actually knows what the heck they're doing, unlike Bill O'Brien. Not all head coaches can be general managers like Bill Belichick. So they need to find the right guy to be the general manager, and they need to find the right head coach to, get the most out of Deshaun Watson in this roster. Okay, I think that Houston actually is a more attractive job than people are willing to give it credit for. Bill O'Brien being fired might have been the best thing to ever happen to Deshaun Watson in his young NFL career, only if Houston can get their next head coach right. Okay, people, let me shift to the two teams up in New York, the New York Jets and the New York Giants. I've gotten a chance to watch every single NFL team at least once this year, and I've seen every single game that the Jets and Giants have played, sadly, because there's been a lot of bad football, okay? Both teams are winless as of right now. Both teams have, 4 losses and 0 wins. And I've watched every single team, like I said, and by far, the New York Jets and the New York Giants are the 2 worst teams in all of football as we speak today. Now, when I look at the Giants, this team is just not very talented. They have a bad offensive line. The wide receiver core is a mess outside of Darius Slayton. Daniel Jones has looked a mess this year at times. On the year, Daniel Jones has thrown 2 touchdowns to 5 interceptions through 4 games played with a 68.3 passer rating. And listen, there's not a whole lot of talent around Daniel Jones at the moment, so I'm going to cut him some slack because he's not been given a whole lot to work with. Saquon Barkley is out for the season. But Daniel Jones' turnovers continue to be a major issue for the Giants. And the one thing you can control as a quarterback is taking care of the football. And Daniel Jones, he just has not done that. And that's a major concern because Daniel Jones, he was a turnover machine last year, despite, having a good, solid rookie season. He turned the football over a lot last year. And so far, the turnover issue has not been corrected. And Joe Judge, I was not sold on Joe Judge as a head coach, heading into the year. And so far, I'm not completely sold right now at all. And ultimately, if this Giants team continues to look as bad as they've looked at times, Joe Judge is going to be out the door within the next 2 seasons, probably. Okay, that's just the harsh reality. And the Jets, the Jets, they're a mess as well. I will say, I do think that the Giants are more talented than the Jets as of right now. If both teams were to play on a neutral site field, I would probably favor the Giants over the Jets, but you can convince me that the Jets, could beat the Giants. Either way you slice it. Both teams are bad. Like I said, the Jets have just been a mess. Adam Gase, I don't know why he still has a job. He's continued to ruin this team. He's not a great head coach. He should probably have never gotten the job. Todd Bowles wasn't the greatest coach in the world, but Adam Gase was brought in to help improve Sam Darnold and that offense. And I've not seen anything creative offensively from Adam Gase at all this season in New York. Adam Gase, he doesn't make adjustments. He's not creative. There's no presence about, Adam Gase. And listen, I don't want to hear the excuses about, Adam Gase doesn't have talent. Brian Flores last year did not have a lot of talent on his roster. The Dolphins literally traded away all of Brian Flores' good players at the start of the season last year, and that team still made progress at the end of the year. We all know the Jets are not going to make the playoffs. We all know the Jets aren't very talented, but this team is not making progress week to week. In fact, recently, the New York Jets just lost on Thursday Night Football to the Denver Broncos 37-28, and the Broncos were starting a third-string quarterback. The Jets were +3 in the turnover margin. They were at home. They caught the Broncos on a short week, and they still lost by double digits at home. That should tell you all you need to know about the New York Jets. Not to mention Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Von Miller, Jarrell Casey, AJ Boye, and Matt Barron all did not play for the Broncos. So the Broncos backup squad just came into New York and beat the Jets by double digits. And Sam Darnold is having some very similar problems to Daniel Jones. Again, let me be very clear. I think Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold both have potential as quarterbacks. And I've always said I need to see about 3 to 4 years from a quarterback before I truly judge what they are. Because, your rookie season, you probably get drafted to a bad team if you're a high draft pick, which Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold were. They were high draft picks that went to bad teams. And listen, the speed of the game in the NFL, it's a lot different from the college level. It's night and day. I'm willing to be patient with Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, but very similar to Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold has problems on tape that show up that just concern me, man. Listen, Sam Darnold is very inaccurate at times. Sam Darnold has some just very head-scratching turnovers that I'm like, what are you doing, Sam Darnold? And like I said earlier with Daniel Jones, I need you to control the things that you can control. And Sam Darnold, he can control being more accurate. Make good decisions. Don't fumble the football. Don't turn the football over. Control those things. And Sam Darnold, he has not controlled those things from time to time. It doesn't help when Sam Darnold is running for his life behind a bad offensive line. He doesn't have very many weapons. I mean, Jamison Crowder, Jeff Smith, and Chris Hogan are his best weapons at wide receiver. And Chris Herndon is his tight end. And while Chris Herndon is a decent tight end, on most teams, he's not going to be the starter. And not to mention, Sam Darnold's best running back is Frank Gore, who's 37 years old and well past his prime. And ultimately, if I were to project as of right now, I gotta say, it looks like the New York Jets and the New York Giants are going to be picking top 3 in the NFL draft. And one of these teams will have an opportunity to maybe draft Trevor Lawrence. And so far, I haven't dove into the film enough to say that the Giants or the Jets should move on from Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones, but you have to at least highly consider this because Because Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, I don't care what anyone says, they are not nearly as talented as Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent. I don't see that generational talent from Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones. And one of these two teams is going to need to make a decision. Do I stick with Sam Darnold? Do I stick with Daniel Jones? Or do I draft Trevor Lawrence? And honestly, drafting Trevor Lawrence might be the best move because we saw the Arizona Cardinals move on from Josh Rosen and they drafted a generational talent in Kyler Murray, and their team has taken off ever since. So all I'm saying is, Jets and Giants fans, your team is not very good, and don't be surprised if your team is drafting for another quarterback in the 2021 NFL Draft. So it's pretty obvious the New York Football Giants are just not a very good football team as we speak today. Now, they do play Washington this week. They get them at home. I'm not too sold on Kyle Allen as quarterback. You know, the Washington's offense has really struggled this year, and New York's offense has struggled this year as well. So, you know, I could see the Giants potentially pulling off a win versus Washington, but a big reason why the Giants have struggled as a football team this year and why their offense specifically has been just flat out doo-doo. It's been garbage. It's stunk. It's not been good. Get it out of there. That offense has been bad. If anything, the Giants defense actually has been kind of the bright spot of their team, which is actually kind of surprising because that defense last year was a hot mess as well. But props to Patrick Graham. Props to, Dexter Lawrence. Props to James Bradbury. The Giants defense is actually a lot better than I thought. But I'm going to focus in on Saquon Barkley because I truly believe that one of the biggest reasons why the New York Football Giants offense is struggling right now is because Saquon Barkley, as we speak today, has a torn ACL. You know, I really didn't get a chance to cover this, in the last couple of weeks, but I thought it would be a fun topic to talk about today. You know, Saquon Barkley, obviously he's out for the season. Prayers up to Saquon Barkley. I hope he recovers from that ACL tear, and I believe that he will probably recover from that ACL tear because Saquon Barkley, he's a strong individual, and he's a guy that's hardworking. So I think that Saquon Barkley will come back and be a very serviceable running back. Don't know if he will quite be the same, just because, he has been nicked up a little bit in the past. But let me just say this, Giants fans, I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. This is not me bashing Saquon Barkley, but I truly believe that if the Giants want to get the most bang for their buck in regards to their football team and they want to, move forward and turn things around quickly, they should at least consider trading Saquon Barkley. Now, they're not going to trade Saquon Barkley this season because right now he's rehabbing and he's dealing with an injury. But at some point this offseason, the Giants need to at least put Saquon Barkley on the trading block. And I will tell you why. They need to look to trade him. I'll tell you why. Looking back at Saquon Barkley, when he was drafted in 2018, I firmly believe that was the wrong pick at number 2 overall. Here's what you people have to realize. I don't care who you are. I don't even care if you're a prime Adrian Peterson. You want to know why? Because Adrian Peterson, in an era where Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning were dominating, guess what? He won MVP a couple years ago. And guess what? During that season, Adrian Peterson and the Minnesota Vikings, they won 0 playoff games. I don't care how great of a running back you are. Taking a running back at number 2 overall should never be the move. And I was not a fan of when the Giants picked Saquon Barkley number 2 overall. And I'm not a fan of it today due to the fact that Saquon Barkley had injuries last year and now he's got a torn ACL. What you have to understand is in the NFL, it's a quarterback and head coach driven league. And not to mention, I think that offensive lines and defensive lines, along with wide receivers, are more valuable to football teams than running backs. Running backs do not win Super Bowls. And I'll tell you why that is. Because when we look at the last 10 Super Bowl winners, the Packers, the Giants, the Ravens, the Seahawks, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Patriots again, Eagles, Patriots again, and Chiefs last year. Out of all 10 of those teams, I can only name one team that had an elite running back. Seattle, led by Marshawn Lynch. And until Russell Wilson got in that building, the Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch, they didn't have much success. They won a playoff game versus Drew Brees. Congratulations, but that was it. The Seahawks did not become a team that potentially could have won a dynasty until they got Russell Wilson in their building. And like I mentioned earlier, Adrian Peterson goes out there and wins the MVP in 2012. His team wins no playoff games. Saquon Barkley is still, in my opinion, one of the 3 best running backs in all of football. In fact, he won Rookie of the Year in 2018. That was all great and sweet. But now Saquon Barkley's got a torn ACL, and the way he plays, that's a concern. And not to mention he had a high ankle sprain last year. And Saquon Barkley's durability is now a question. And by the way, Saquon Barkley, even though he has those questions, guess what? I think Saquon Barkley, if he comes back this coming season healthy, he's going to ball out. And Saquon Barkley, he's eventually going to ask for Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey money. You want to know why he's going to ask for that money? Because Saquon Barkley is just as, if not more talented than both those guys. I truly believe that Saquon Barkley at his best is the most purely gifted runner of the football in the NFL right now. Maybe not the most purely gifted runner, because I think that Ezekiel Elliott might be the best pure runner in the NFL. But as far as just overall ability when it comes to being a running back, Saquon Barkley might be the most naturally gifted running back in the NFL right now. But let's look at some of the players that the Giants could have had if they took someone else besides Saquon Barkley. They could have had Josh Allen, they could have had Lamar Jackson, or they could have had Sam Darnold. And right now, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are much more better quarterbacks right now than Daniel Jones. And while Sam Darnold, hasn't really panned out with the Jets, for what it's worth, last year, he went 7-6 as a starter with nothing around him. I don't know if Daniel Jones last year could have went 7-6 as a starter with the New York Jets roster. Daniel Jones turnovers continue to be a major issue. Okay, so you could have had an upgrade potentially at quarterback, right there. You look at some of the defensive players they could have drafted. They could have drafted Bradley Chubb. They could have drafted Roquan Smith. How great would it have been if the Giants could have got Bradley Chubb on their defensive line? Because right now, they don't have a legit pass rusher. Kyler Fackrell, Marcus Golden, they're not doing the job for me. The Giants could have drafted Quentin Nelson. They could have drafted Sony Michel or Nick Chubb. Let me ask you Giants fans this question. Let's say the Giants trade out of that number 2 overall pick and they get Quentin Nelson and they get Nick Chubb or Sony Michel in the second round. Would you rather have Quentin Nelson and Nick Chubb or just Saquon Barkley and no one else? I'd rather have Quentin Nelson and Nick Chubb. Or you could have potentially had Bradley Chubb and Nick Chubb as well. Or you could have Bradley Chubb and Nick Chubb or Bradley Chubb and Sony Michel potentially. The bottom line is the Giants could have gotten a serviceable, good running back in that draft, and they did not need to take a running back at number 2 overall. That was the wrong pick. And I truly believe that they need to move off of Saquon Barkley because running backs don't win Super Bowls. In my opinion, the best way to go about things is running back by committee. Look at the Patriots during their dynasty run. It was all running back by committee. The Chiefs last year, they had a running back by committee set. I think you need to move off of Saquon Barkley. He's got an ACL injury, fragile ankles, and so far, the Giants haven't won a lot of games with Saquon Barkley. In fact, since 2017, the Giants have the worst record in the NFL. Saquon Barkley has not contributed to winning. So ultimately, I believe the New York Giants need to look to trade Saquon Barkley sooner rather than later. Okay, people, let me state the obvious. The fact that Adam Gase still has a job right now, it's mind-boggling to me. It really is. Let's keep this in mind, people. Adam Gase was brought in to be the New York Jets head coach because the Jets felt that if they fired Todd Bowles and brought in an offensive head coach in Adam Gase, that their team would take off, that Sam Darnold would improve as a quarterback, that their football team would be much better. They felt that Adam Gase was the missing piece to the puzzle. And I don't think Todd Bowles, honestly, was all that bad of a head coach in New York during his time with the Jets. I just felt that, there was nothing really special about Todd Bowles as a head coach. I think that he's better off definitely as a coordinator. He's doing his thing in Tampa Bay, being the defensive coordinator right now. And I understood the philosophy that, okay, Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded head coach. Let's bring in a young, creative, offensive-minded head coach to go and help out Sam Darnold. And you look at the teams that are succeeding right now, the Packers, the Saints, the Chiefs, the 49ers, they got to a Super Bowl last year. Even the Cardinals. You know what these teams have in common? They have offensive-minded head coaches. So I understood the thought that, okay, you're trying to bring in an offensive-minded head coach. Fine, maybe Adam Gase could work. But Adam Gase has been a total disaster in New York up to this point. There's no other way to slice it. And the Adam Gase defenders can go out there and say, well, the team went 7-9 last year. That's not all that bad. Well, for the most part, I kind of agree with you, but mainly the reason why the team went 7-9 last year was because of Greg Williams and that defense, along with Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold, making sugar cream cookies out of really bad ingredients, okay? The Jets are arguably the worst team in all of football as we speak today. And recently, like I said earlier, the Jets lost to the Broncos at home, 37-28. And keep in mind, the Broncos were starting a third-string quarterback named Brett Rippon. Who's Brett Rippon? And not to mention, the Jets in that game, they were +3 in the turnover margin. They were at home. They caught the Broncos on a short week. And the Broncos were starting a third-string quarterback, had multiple players out due to injury, and they still beat the Jets by double digits at home. That's a bad sign. Like I mentioned earlier, Drew Lock didn't play. Courtland Sutton didn't play. Noah Fant didn't play. Von Miller didn't play. Jarrell Casey didn't play. A.J. Boye didn't play. Mark Barron did not play. Mark Barron did not play. All those players for the Broncos did not play, and the Jets still somehow found a way to lose that game. How does Adam Gase have a job right now? Adam Gase is single-handedly ruining Sam Darnold's development, and he is single-handedly ruining the New York Jets franchise before our very eyes. And listen, I don't want to hear the excuses about, the offensive line is bad, the wide receivers suck, the defense sucks. Brian Flores last year, I told you this earlier, Brian Flores was working with nothing last season. The Dolphins' leading rusher last season was a 37-year-old Ryan Fitzpatrick. And he's not a running back, people. He's a quarterback. That was the Miami Dolphins' leading rusher last season. That's how bad that roster was last season. Keep in mind, Adam Gase had Le'Veon Bell on his roster. Le'Veon Bell, a former all-pro level running back. Le'Veon Bell was a top 5 running back in football. But you want to know why his career has gone south? His career has gone south because Adam Gase is not a good head coach, and he's not creative enough, and he doesn't know what the heck he is doing. Not to mention, the Jets just don't have a lot of talent on their offensive line. That does matter. But man, like I mentioned earlier, you've seen players get progressively better when they leave Adam Gase. Keep in mind, Ryan Tannehill was on the Miami Dolphins roster at quarterback when Adam Gase was there. Adam Gase got him to the playoffs one time. And now Ryan Tannehill is putting up MVP level numbers playing for a defensive-minded head coach in Mike Vrabel. A defensive-minded head coach is getting MVP level production from Ryan Tannehill, and Adam Gase, who's supposed to be an offensive guru, did nothing with Ryan Tannehill in Miami. No wonder why Sam Darnold has looked so bad at times with the Jets. You want to know why? Because his head coach, he's just lost. His head coach is doing nothing to help him progress. He's just not. You look at even players like Damian Williams. Damian Williams was a Super Bowl MVP candidate, leaving Adam Gase. He very well could have won Super Bowl MVP this past season. You look at Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake looks like a starting level running back with the Arizona Cardinals. When he had Adam Gase by his side as head coach back in Miami, the guy was not doing anything. You look at Devontae Parker in Miami. Devontae Parker looks like one of the best wide receivers in the NFL now. And I know I'm pointing out the times in which Adam Gase was not in New York with the Jets. But keeping it $1.50 with you guys, what has Adam Gase done that has been special in New York with the Jets? Where's the signature win? Where's the time where I look at the New York Jets and I say, that's a well-coached football team? I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Adam Gase is not the future head coach for the Jets. The players do not respect him. The guy can't make adjustments. He doesn't evolve offensively enough for me. He's not creative enough. He does not know how to develop a quarterback. Sam Darnold has really suffered due to poor development, in regards to the coaching staff in New York. That falls on Adam Gase's shoulders because, I don't know, he's the head coach of the team. You think it would fall on his shoulders. Ultimately, Adam Gase needs to be fired sooner rather than later. And the Jets, they need to get a real head coach in the building to go out there and help Sam Darnold. But to be honest with you, I don't even know if the Jets can get a real legitimate head coach. You want to know why? Because they're a bad franchise right now. And I'm sorry, but teams are going to look at the Falcons job, and they're going to look at the Texans job, and they're going to look at a lot of other open head coaching jobs before they look at the New York Jets head coaching job. Because if I'm Eric Bieniemy, why would I want to go to New York to coach the Jets? The Jets are a mess right now. And Adam Gase deserves most of the blame because when I look at the New York football Jets right now, I say this is not a well-coached football team. This is not a well-oiled machine at all. And ultimately, Adam Gase needs to be fired sooner rather than later as New York Jets head coach because he is not cutting it at all right now. Okay, people, let's talk about Dwayne Haskins. For those of you that have been following my channel for a long time, you guys know that I'm a big Dwayne Haskins guy. I said when Dwayne Haskins was drafted by Washington that this guy has the ability to be a franchise quarterback. I felt that one day he could develop into a top 10 quarterback. I said this guy has the arm talent, the swagger, the accuracy and the mental makeup to turn the Washington organization around. Okay, I said that, okay? And Dwayne Haskins has been benched in favor of Kyle Allen through 4 weeks of the 2020 NFL season. In fact, Dwayne Haskins isn't even the second-string quarterback on the roster. Alex Smith is the second-string quarterback. So Dwayne Haskins is the third-string quarterback in Washington as we speak today, right now. Let's talk about it, okay? There's a lot to unpack right here. Now, I'm going to address Ron Rivera's decision to bench Dwayne Haskins. While I do not agree with the decision to bench Dwayne Haskins at all, I think it's a bad move on Ron Rivera's part. While I disagree with it, I understand why Ron Rivera made this move. I really do. Okay? Do I agree with it? No. Do I agree with the approach Ron Rivera has taken in regards to developing Dwayne Haskins? No, but I understand it. And if you want to blame anyone for Dwayne Haskins being on the bench right now, blame Daniel Snyder. Because Daniel Snyder was the one that drafted Dwayne Haskins in the first place when, last year, no one on that coaching staff wanted to draft Dwayne Haskins. And guess what? Ron Rivera, he didn't draft Dwayne Haskins. He was not on the Washington coaching staff last year. He was in Carolina last year. So Ron Rivera has every right to come in and say, hey, this isn't my guy. Maybe I don't like him. Maybe I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. Let's move on. Let's bring in my guy, Kyle Allen, and see what he can do. Ron Rivera has that right, okay? Ron Rivera has no ties to Dwayne Haskins. And listen, Ron Rivera, I respect the guy wholeheartedly. Ron Rivera, to me, I think that he's a top 10 head coach. I think Ron Rivera, I've said in the past, Ron Rivera has the potential to turn the Washington football team around. And listen, Ron Rivera has played in the NFL before as a player. Ron Rivera coached for a long time at Carolina. He actually got the Carolina Panthers to a Super Bowl. Ron Rivera knows his football. So if he feels that Dwayne Haskins is not giving his team enough of a chance to win, then I have to respect what Ron Rivera is doing right here by benching Dwayne Haskins, even though I disagree with the decision. Okay, so I've gotten that out the way. I'm going to now defend Dwayne Haskins because I'm going to pretty much throw out all the things that I said right there and make the case for why Dwayne Haskins has just been absolutely screwed, because I firmly believe that Dwayne Haskins has not gotten a fair shake in Washington. I don't think Dwayne Haskins has been set up to succeed by that organization. And ultimately, I believe that Washington's organization is ruining Dwayne Haskins. I will tell you why. there are some problems with Dwayne Haskins at the moment. Dwayne Haskins has not been knocking people's socks off. He's missed some throws. He hasn't been going through his reads properly at times. But so has Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has problems. You can say the same thing about Daniel Jones. You can say the same thing about a lot of young quarterbacks out there. Heck, Kyler Murray, a couple weeks ago versus the Detroit Lions, he had 3 interceptions in that game. He had 3 interceptions versus the Detroit Lions. Dwayne Haskins is a young quarterback, and I believe Dwayne Haskins has gotten a raw deal in Washington. Considering the horrible situations that Dwayne Haskins has been put in throughout his young career, 11 starts is not a good enough sample size to truly judge Dwayne Haskins. I've always said I'm going to give young quarterbacks 3 to 4 years to prove to me that they can be the guy. Rookie season, okay, house money, whatever success happens, okay? Your sophomore season, I want to see improvement. And then your 3rd or 4th season, I want to see a final product. And what people fail to realize is this. The Washington organization has failed Dwayne Haskins from the jump. They just have. Because what Washington needed to realize was Dwayne Haskins only played 1 year of college football at Ohio State. He only got 13 starts in college. What does that tell you? That tells you he's inexperienced. He's raw. He needs time to develop. He needs the proper coaching. He needs the proper infrastructure. And he needs a good team around him, especially early on, to succeed. Maybe later on, once Dwayne Haskins develops, he can become, the franchise quarterback, and maybe you don't have to build around him as much. But as of right now, and based on what we knew about Dwayne Haskins heading into the NFL, we knew this guy needed some time to develop and grow. And guess what? Washington has not put the infrastructure in place for Dwayne Haskins to maximize his talents and for Dwayne Haskins to develop properly. Dwayne Haskins has been screwed. Imagine being drafted by a team that did not want to draft you. Imagine going to a team with a bottom 5 offensive line. Imagine going to a team with limited weapons at wide receiver and a running back out the gate. Imagine going to a team with a bad defense, because last year the Washington football team had a bad defense. Imagine going to a team last year that finished with only 3 wins and with the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Imagine having to go to that team and the coaching staff isn't even fully committed to developing you properly, not to mention you're an inexperienced quarterback that's very talented but very raw because you only started about 13 games in college. And imagine the very next year having a coach come in and not be fully all in on you and not give you the proper opportunity to develop and pretty much admit to the press that, Dwayne Haskins was behind in his development because he didn't get preseason games this year. He was behind because Kyle Allen and Alex Smith know the playbook much better than Dwayne Haskins. Ron Rivera literally came out and said that Alex Smith and Kyle Allen have the advantage because they've been in the system before, and Dwayne Haskins is behind because he did not get enough time in the offseason to prepare. Well, Ron Rivera, what did you expect from Dwayne Haskins? Did you expect him to go out there and throw for 3 touchdown passes versus the Baltimore Ravens? Did you expect him to go out there and dominate versus the Philadelphia Eagles? Did you expect him to go out there and light the world on fire? I think Ron Rivera is sadly mistaken if he felt that Dwayne Haskins was going to go out there and dominate and look amazing due to the circumstances that Dwayne Haskins has been put in. Not to mention, what did Washington do in the offseason to help out their young quarterback, Dwayne Haskins? Did they improve the offensive line? No. Did they sign a wide receiver? No. They signed Dontrell Inman off the streets because Kelvin Harmon tore his ACL. The Antonio Gibson draft pick was cool. The Antonio Gandy Golden draft pick was cool, even though he's a 4th round pick out of Liberty that can't seem to get on the field. What did Washington do in the offseason to help their young quarterback be better? What has Washington done to pull for this kid and develop him properly? They've done nothing to Dwayne Haskins to help him develop properly. And that lies on Daniel Snyder, the owner. I'm not even going to blame Ron Rivera for this. Like I said, because Ron Rivera, he just got to Washington. If he doesn't like Dwayne Haskins, fine. It's whatever. But Daniel Snyder, if you think that Dwayne Haskins is the franchise quarterback, you need to bring in a coach that actually, is going to embrace Dwayne Haskins, okay? Dwayne Haskins has been failed by his organization. And it's a shame to see because I see guys like Patrick Mahomes, coming into the NFL as rookies, not being able to read defenses, being very inaccurate at college, but having the proper infrastructure and the proper roster around him to succeed. Same thing with Josh Allen, same thing with Lamar Jackson, and even the same thing with Mitchell Trubisky. We could talk greasy about Mitch Trubisky all we want, but guess what? The Chicago Bears, they gave Mitchell Trubisky every single ample opportunity to go out there and prove that he was a franchise quarterback, even when it was obvious that he stunk, that he was awful, that he was doo-doo, that he was terrible. They gave Mitch Trubisky every single opportunity to go out there, make mistakes, and try to develop properly. Washington has not done that with Dwayne Haskins, and ultimately, as of right now, Washington is ruining Dwayne Haskins' development as a quarterback, and they are failing this young kid. To give up on Dwayne Haskins after only 4 starts into his sophomore season, and honestly, this is kind of Dwayne Haskins' rookie season, as last year, he was ruined by the coaching staff, but to give up on Dwayne Haskins, that's a lame duck move, and I understand that Ron Rivera has a job to do. He has to go out there and try to win football games, but Ron Rivera has time. I don't think Ron Rivera is going to get fired after this year if the team does bad. Ron Rivera said himself in the offseason that we're going to try to rebuild this football team from the ground up. And I understand that the NFC East is up for grabs this year, and it's not a very good division, but that honestly should imply that, hey, because the NFC East is so bad, let's roll out Dwayne Haskins and see what he's got. Because this division is going to beat up on itself time in and time out. I understand that Ron Rivera has a job to do. I'm not even going to knock Ron Rivera for making this move too much more, okay? But in the end, Dwayne Haskins, in my eyes, has gotten a raw deal in Washington. More times than not, quarterbacks are not properly developed in the NFL, and that's ultimately why they fail. And guess what, people? If you put good players around Dwayne Haskins, you know what's probably going to happen? He's probably going to throw for a lot of touchdown passes like he did at Ohio State, because when Dwayne Haskins had a great team at Ohio State, he broke Big Ten records. He had the greatest season in Big Ten history. So, Washington, put good players around him if he's your quarterback for the future. Develop this kid properly. Give him every opportunity to go out there and succeed. And listen, this guy needs reps. This guy's raw. Let him go out there and make mistakes. And you need to figure out what Dwayne Haskins is. Maybe Dwayne Haskins is a bad quarterback. Maybe he's a great quarterback. We don't know what Dwayne Haskins truly is, because last time I checked, you don't judge quarterbacks based on 10 or 11 career starts. If we would have judged Peyton Manning on 10 or 11 career starts, guess what? He's a bust, people. He was doo-doo as a rookie. He was awful. Jared Goff was terrible his rookie year. And guess what? Once Jared Goff got the right infrastructure and a coach that believed in him, guess what? Jared Goff goes to a Super Bowl, baby. Jared Goff looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. Ultimately, if Dwayne Haskins gets another opportunity to become a starting quarterback somewhere, whether it's in Washington or another franchise, he's going to need to be more accurate. He's going to need to be more consistent. He will need to tweak his mechanics. He's not a finished product. But unfortunately, I don't even know if Dwayne Haskins will get another opportunity elsewhere. I hope I am wrong, because I fully believe if Dwayne Haskins gets another opportunity, he's going to throw for a lot of touchdowns. He's going to, change a franchise somewhere. But ultimately, I don't know what Dwayne Haskins' future is. And I hope that Washington trades Dwayne Haskins away to a better franchise. A franchise that has stability and structure. And a franchise that has good players, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe he can become the successor to Ben Roethlisberger. Hopefully he goes to Carolina, maybe. Hopefully Matt Rule and Joe Brady can get their hands on, Dwayne Haskins. You saw what, Joe Brady did for Joe Burrow at LSU. He worked magic with Joe Burrow. Hopefully Dwayne Haskins can get an opportunity with the Chicago Bears one day, because ultimately Mitch Trubisky's not the future, and Nick Foles, he's proven to, kind of flame out, in the past eventually. Maybe Dwayne Haskins can go to Minnesota. Kirk Cousins is on a bad contract, and Kirk Cousins has looked doo-doo this year. I hope Dwayne Haskins can maybe go to the Falcons or some other franchise that might potentially need a quarterback for the future. Heck, the Indianapolis Colts. Once Philip Rivers, retires, maybe Dwayne Haskins can go there. I hope Dwayne Haskins gets another opportunity, but unfortunately, Dwayne Haskins' NFL future is boom or bust at this point, and ultimately, Dwayne Haskins is being ruined by Washington's organization. Okay, people. Enough talking about Dwayne Haskins. I'll probably talk about him a little bit in this segment right here. But I want to really zero in on Washington's organization. A long time ago, which was roughly 30 to 40 years ago, Washington was categorized as a well-run, great organization. In 1983, that team won a Super Bowl. In 1988, the team won a Super Bowl again. And in 1992, Washington won another Super Bowl. People forget that Washington has won 3 Super Bowls in their franchise history. They've got 3 Super Bowls under their belt. You know, teams like the Browns have not won Super Bowls. Washington has won Super Bowls. A long time ago, Washington was looked at as a well-run, great organization. But as of right now, Washington is a bottom-level franchise. When we think of top-of-the-level franchises, we think of the Patriots, the Steelers, teams that are well-run at the top, teams that, spend money in free agency, make the necessary trades, they're not out of control, and they actually have a great infrastructure for their players. Washington, on the other hand, as of right now, the last 25 seasons, they have gotten in the category with the Jaguars and the Jets as teams that are just bottom-level franchises with no stability and no true direction. In fact, in the last 20 years, Washington has only won 1 playoff game. Stable franchises have more than 1 playoff victory in 20 seasons. And Washington, they're in that bottom-level franchise category, unfortunately. And a lot of that has to do with Daniel Snyder, the owner. Now, I think that Daniel Snyder has taken some strides. He finally fired Bruce Allen. And Snyder actually brought in a real head coach in Ron Rivera that has gotten to a Super Bowl and has shown that he's capable of turning around a franchise that is lost. And right now, Washington is a lost franchise. And I do believe that over time, Ron Rivera can turn around Washington's organization. And by the way, I don't agree with Ron Rivera, moving on from Dwayne Haskins, as far as, being the starting quarterback through 4 games. I truly believe Dwayne Haskins has gotten a raw deal in Washington, like I mentioned earlier, multiple different head coaches that have not been committed to him for 1 second, bad offensive lines, limited weapons. Washington has not spent money in free agency to improve the offensive line. They didn't go out and get Dwayne Haskins another weapon at wide receiver. But either way you slice it, I like the fact that Daniel Snyder is allowing Ron Rivera to do what he wants to do, because Ron Rivera didn't draft Dwayne Haskins. Daniel Snyder drafted Dwayne Haskins. And in years past, Daniel Snyder would probably have said to the head coach on the team, hey, don't bench Dwayne Haskins no matter what. I like the fact that Snyder is allowing Ron Rivera to do what he wants to do, even though I disagree with Ron Rivera benching Dwayne Haskins like I mentioned earlier, okay? But see, here's the thing. While Washington did draft Chase Young, who's going to be a stud for a long time in my opinion, if he stays healthy, while Washington has Ron Rivera, and while Daniel Snyder has somewhat turned the corner, Washington will never fully succeed and fully prosper as a franchise until they truly find a franchise quarterback. And Dwayne Haskins might be that guy. He might not be that guy. So far right now, based on the direction that he's going in, fair or unfair, he might not be the guy. I still believe in Dwayne Haskins, but, you never know. And Kyle Allen, he looked good last year at times. He looked bad last year at times. I don't think he's the future. And Alex Smith, I don't think he's the future either. But getting back to my point, until Washington gets a real franchise quarterback, and until they actually find ways to build around that quarterback, and until Washington is actually patient with a quarterback, they're never going to fully prosper. The Dwayne Haskins story has been a cycle in Washington for the last 20 to 25 years. And Kyle Allen is going to get the start versus the Los Angeles Rams. Maybe Kyle Allen is the future. Right now, I don't believe that he's the future, but if he is, God bless him. But Kyle Allen will mark the 30th starting quarterback to suit up for Washington since 1993. And I'm going to ask you guys this question. When is the last time we have looked at a Washington football team and said they have truly built a real roster around their quarterback? Maybe in the Kirk Cousins days, because you can't really find too many instances where Washington really truly built a real roster around the quarterback, and you can't find too many instances the last 20 to 25 years in which they've actually hit on a quarterback. There's a reason why Washington has had 30 starting quarterbacks since 1993. You want to know why? It's been because of lack of a great infrastructure, lack of a great culture, and lack of great ownership. Washington's biggest problem has been lacking infrastructure. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about stability, building a culture, having the right head coach for your quarterback, actually building around that quarterback, giving that quarterback actual time to develop properly. That's one of the reasons why I'm so disappointed that Washington is deciding to move, on from Dwayne Haskins as a starter, 4 games into the season, just because I don't think you should judge quarterbacks based on their first 11 starts, especially when you take into account the situation Dwayne Haskins has been put into. If we judged all quarterbacks by their first 11 starts, like I mentioned earlier, that means Peyton Manning's a bust, because Peyton Manning through his first 11 starts was doo-doo. He was awful, and Peyton Manning, he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks of all time. You have to give quarterbacks time, and you have to give quarterbacks the right head coach for them, and you actually need to build around a quarterback. When is the last time we've said Washington has had a great offensive line, great wide receiver core around their quarterback? The closest thing you can maybe say is the RG3 days and Kirk Cousins days, and they were impatient with those guys. And obviously there was some unlucky things that bounced, not in Washington's favor, but the common denominator for Washington and their biggest problem has been they have not been patient with their quarterbacks, and they have failed to actually build a real roster around their quarterbacks. You want to know why Tom Brady is successful? He's successful because he's got a good head coach in Bill Belichick. They have never neglected to address the offensive line. He's always had solid wide receiver targets. They've always had a solid system put in place for Tom Brady, and they've always given him a very good defense. Washington, they just have not, fully giving quarterbacks fair chances and fair opportunities, for the past 20 to 25 seasons. And listen, what if Tom Brady landed with Washington? Do you think Tom Brady would have been the same quarterback that he is today? He wouldn't be the same quarterback he is today. You want to know why? Because Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. And you want to know why Tom Brady fully prospered and fully developed? He fully prospered and he fully developed because he had a great head coach that came in and gave Tom Brady a chance, and they built a great infrastructure around Tom Brady. I'm all about knowing what you have at the quarterback position before you actually get them in that building. I looked at Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, and I said, this guy is ready to start day number 1. He can come in. He's played in a national championship game. He's got a lot of experience. He's gone through some growing pains. He's properly developed. He's ready to go day number 1. When I looked at Lamar Jackson, I said this guy's very talented. I like Lamar Jackson, but he needs to sit the bench for a couple weeks. He needs to be properly developed, and he needs to get into a system that allows him to do what he does best. You can't just put Lamar Jackson into any system and ask him to go out there and fully prosper as a rookie. And Baltimore, they realized that. And they said, hey, let's tailor our scheme towards Lamar Jackson. The Baltimore Ravens did not run a Lamar Jackson-friendly offense before Lamar Jackson got there. But John Harbaugh and that coaching staff made the necessary adjustments. And when it comes to Dwayne Haskins, Washington should have known that Dwayne Haskins only started 1 year of college football, that he was inexperienced. They should have known that he's more of a throwback pocket passer. He plays more like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady rather than playing like Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson. Dwayne Haskins is more of your pocket passer. They needed to address the offensive line. They've yet to address the offensive line for that guy. And ultimately, they've failed Dwayne Haskins, and they failed a lot of quarterbacks very similar to Dwayne Haskins until Washington actually finds a franchise quarterback that is legit, and until they actually build a great infrastructure around that quarterback, and until Washington actually is patient with a quarterback, they will never fully prosper. That has been Washington's biggest problem over the past 20 to 25 years, and until they fix those problems, they will never fully prosper as a franchise. I want to shift to Justin Herbert. Has anyone been paying attention to Justin Herbert this year? Because I have, and I got to tell you, man, I've watched every single Justin Herbert game this year, watched every single snap of each game, and I got to say, man, I'm impressed. I truly am. Justin Herbert has surprised me. I did not think Justin Herbert would be this good this early at this stage in his career in the National Football League. I had some major questions about Justin Herbert, when he was going through the pre-draft process, and I said not the San Diego Chargers, pardon me. I said the Los Angeles Chargers might have made a mistake picking Justin Herbert with the number 6 overall pick. I was not all in on Justin Herbert. I actually made a video saying that Justin Herbert one day potentially could become a bust. And while every draft prospect pretty much, does have some bust potential, there is rarely a can't miss prospect, even though Joe Burrow and Chase Young were pretty close to it this year, and they've, delivered so far 100%. But here's the thing, man. I had some huge questions about Justin Herbert, and I was not sure that he was capable of becoming the long-term franchise quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers. I admitted that he was going to a good team that had a good roster, a good coaching staff put in place, but I didn't quite know if Justin Herbert would be able to pull through and become the franchise quarterback. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Justin Herbert is going to be a top 10 quarterback one day. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to win you a bunch of Super Bowls. Not even saying that he is going to, win a bunch of games this year. But I will say, based on what I've seen so far, I'm impressed. I like what I've seen from Justin Herbert, okay? And the reason why I was very questionable about Justin Herbert during the pre-draft process was because I saw some missed throws at Oregon on a consistent basis. I didn't think he was that accurate. I saw a lot of misreads. I felt that he was more of a one-read quarterback. Didn't see him going through his progressions on a regular basis. And Justin Herbert played 4 years at Oregon, and he did not take the gradual jump year to year that I felt that he should have taken on a consistent basis, okay? I just did not think that Justin Herbert truly flashed enough at Oregon. I felt that Justin Herbert was way too inconsistent, and I actually compared Justin Herbert to a McDonald's burger in the past. I said that when you watch a McDonald's commercial, you see that big juicy burger on your screen, but then when you buy it, sometimes it's not as juicy or as good as advertised on your screen. And I saw Justin Herbert, and I saw a big arm quarterback that had a lot of talent, that had a lot of natural ability, but it did not match the production on the field. That's where I got that analogy from. But I gotta say, that McDonald's burger looked very tasty, in college from time to time. And now I think the final product is there potentially. Justin Herbert, that McDonald's burger turned out pretty well, I should say. Okay, it turned out pretty well so far. So, look, Justin Herbert, I'm not all in on Justin Herbert. Not going to crown him, automatically out the gate. But I got to say, I like what I've seen from Justin Herbert. And listen, it's pretty easy to spot who has the capabilities of playing at a high level in the National Football League very early on based on the circumstances to a certain degree. If a quarterback is given a decent chance to succeed in the NFL and they are showcasing immense talent, that shows they potentially can play at a high level for a long time. Example, Joe Burrow. We saw flashes of Joe Burrow in his first game as a starter in the National Football League. The first time we laid our eyes on Patrick Mahomes as a starting quarterback, we were wowed. We said, wow, that guy looks special. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. We said that guy throws the ball differently. Deshaun Watson, his rookie year, he was on pace for 43 touchdown passes. We saw Kyler Murray flash early on in his rookie season. If you want to talk about basketball players, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, these guys looked great early on in their career. It did not take long for us to figure out, these guys are talented and they have the capability to play at a high level in their respective sport. And I see that same thing with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is very capable of playing at a high level. This guy has the requisite size. He's got great mobility. In fact, his first ever career touchdown was a rushing touchdown. And in today's NFL, you kind of have to be able to move around a little bit in that pocket. Justin Herbert moves around very well. He's a very good athlete. And his deep ball accuracy has been very impressive. It's very effortless the way he throws the football at times. At times, it has looked effortless, man. And I did not see that effortlessness enough consistently at Oregon. But he showed off that big arm a lot so far in the National Football League through his first 3 starts. You look at the 53-yard touchdown pass they threw versus the Buccaneers to Tyrone Johnson. You look at the touchdown they threw off his back foot to Jalen Guyton that went for 72 yards. We saw some big-time throws versus the Kansas City Chiefs as well. He was feeding the ball in the tight windows. He was playing very well. And the thing that has impressed me the most about Justin Herbert is his accuracy, his ball placement, his decision-making, and his creativity. So far, Justin Herbert has completed 72% of his passes, 931 yards, 5 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, and a 102 passer rating through 3 games as a starter. This guy, Justin Herbert, has gone head-to-head with Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, and played Tom Brady down to the wire. This guy took the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs to overtime. Patrick Mahomes was pretty good, okay? This guy has the talent to be something special in the National Football League, in my opinion, man. And the things that I mentioned that I was impressed about in regards to Justin Herbert, as far as his accuracy, his ball placement, those were things that he struggled with at Oregon. And he has corrected those things so far in the National Football League. So, man, I got to say, Justin Herbert, he looks to be proving me wrong. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. When new evidence presents itself, I have no problem coming on the show and admitting, hey, I laid an egg, I was wrong. And so far, Justin Herbert, his career is off to a pretty good start. I have been very impressed by what I have seen from Justin Herbert through his first 3 career NFL starts. Justin Herbert has the potential to be a very special quarterback. Justin Herbert has shown elite flashes through his first 3 NFL starts, and that's a good sign if you are a Chargers fan, because he has the potential to be your franchise quarterback for the future. Most definitely. Okay, everyone, I'm going to take a short break. When I return, I'm going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Cleveland Browns as I released a couple short clip episodes on YouTube, a couple days ago talking about those teams. So those of you that are listening on podcasting platforms, if you just solely listen on podcasting platforms, you guys have not heard my thoughts on Dan Quinn being fired. You guys have not heard my latest thoughts on the Browns. I believe the Browns are a legit playoff team, and I recently admitted that I was wrong about Ben Roethlisberger. These episodes were made roughly about a week ago, so some of the things I'm talking about might be in a little bit past tense just because I'm addressing it now, and some of these events, occurred about a week ago, but I still think that these episodes are very relevant to this show. So without further ado, I present to you those short clip episodes. I will be right back very shortly. This is the Juice Alert, episode number 18. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. It is very obvious at this point that head coach Dan Quinn needs to be relieved of his duties as Atlanta Falcons head coach. Dan Quinn needs to be fired. And I said even last year, when the Atlanta Falcons started the season 1-7 through 8 games in 2019, I said Dan Quinn should have been fired at that point in the season. I was very shocked that the Atlanta Falcons did not make a decision to fire Dan Quinn last year. And it is pretty obvious that Dan Quinn has overstayed his welcome in Atlanta as head coach. And I'm not even trying to crucify Dan Quinn for losing tonight to a very good Green Bay Packers team. Even though the Green Bay Packers, dominated the Atlanta Falcons today, I expected the Falcons to lose. The Packers are just a better team. In fact, in week number 1, when the Seahawks beat the Falcons, I wasn't shocked. The Seahawks are better than the Falcons. But see, here's the thing. The Atlanta Falcons are 0-4 on the season, and they let 2 games get away from them that they should not have let get away from them. In week number 2, they were up 20-0 on the Dallas Cowboys at one point, and they lost. In fact, with 5 minutes left to go in that game, they had a 39-24 lead in that game, a 15-point lead with 5 minutes left to go in the game, and the Atlanta Falcons found a way to lose the football game. Same thing with the Chicago Bears game in week number 3. With 7 minutes left to go in that game, the Atlanta Falcons had a 16-point lead on the Chicago Bears. With 7 minutes left to go in that game, the score was 26-10. And the Atlanta Falcons continue to blow leads, and this team, year after year, continues to underperform due to Dan Quinn and the coaching staff not being up to par. The writing is on the wall. Dan Quinn has been there for 6 seasons. He's got 4 losing seasons. Yes, he did get the team to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but in that Super Bowl, the Atlanta Falcons blew a 28-3 lead to the New England Patriots. That's probably the biggest choke job in Super Bowl history, blowing a 28-3 lead, a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl. And see, here's the thing. The Atlanta Falcons have not sniffed getting back to a Super Bowl ever since that moment. This team has never recovered, in my opinion, from that blown lead in the Super Bowl. And see, here's the thing. The Atlanta Falcons defense is awful. It's not good. It is doo. And Dan Quinn, he's supposed to be a defensive guru. And time again, I see his defense underperforming in Atlanta. Dan Quinn was a defensive coordinator back when he was with the Seattle Seahawks when they had the Legion of Boom. And listen, man, when you are a defensive-minded head coach and your defense continues to underperform and be amongst one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL, and if you have watched the Falcons at any point over the last 3 seasons, it's hard to find very many positive things to say about that defense. The defense can't tackle. They can't rush the quarterback. I understand that there's lack of talent, but that's the thing. Coaching matters in the NFL. Okay, when you don't have as much talent, you're supposed to have coaches come through for you and scheme up things and get the most out of your players. And Dan Quinn consistently has underperformed in that area as far as making that defense look good. The defense has been very, very bad the last couple of years in Atlanta. That's one of the big reasons why the team has underperformed. And listen, man, the Atlanta Falcons, they have talent. You know, Matt Ryan, he's one of the best quarterbacks in all of football right now. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Todd Gurley, even Grady Jarrett, Ty McKinley, and Deion Jones and A.J. Terrell, a first-round pick, are on your defense. The Atlanta Falcons do not lack talent. But the one common denominator over the past couple of seasons has been Dan Quinn consistently blowing games for this team. I believe the locker room has lost all faith in Dan Quinn. He should have been fired after last year, after the team started off 1-7. The team was 1-7 through 8 games. I don't know how he survived, after that. I don't know how the Atlanta Falcons did not fire Dan Quinn after last year, but he's here right now. And guess what? I don't think that he's going to be there much longer. I will be shocked if Dan Quinn is not fired at some point within the next 24 hours. And if he's not fired within the next 24 hours, then the Falcons, they're just doing themselves no favors as an organization, as Dan Quinn needs to be fired ASAP, in my opinion. Atlanta is officially out of the playoff race, especially when you take into account the Atlanta Falcons are playing in the NFC South Division. As of right now, Tampa Bay and New Orleans look like playoff teams to me, even though I do think that New Orleans has some questions, but they're still better than Atlanta. Tampa Bay looks pretty good, and not to mention, even Carolina right now has a better record than the Atlanta Falcons. We're not even going to talk about Green Bay and Seattle when comparing them to Atlanta, because Atlanta, they don't match up with those teams at all. I believe the Atlanta Falcons are best served hitting the reset button. This team needs to go into a full rebuild mode, and they need to clean house. That is what is best for the franchise's future as of today. As of early October 2020, as of right now, with this team being 0-4, this team needs to go into full rebuild mode. And honestly, if I were the Atlanta Falcons, I would start to tank for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or maybe Trey Lance. I would start unloading this team. I would start putting Julio Jones on the trading block. I would start putting Calvin Ridley potentially on the trading block. I would look to maybe move Grady Jarrett or Deion Jones. And at some point, whether it's during this season or in the offseason, I know some Falcons fans are going to hate me for saying this, but hear me out. The Atlanta Falcons, at some point this season or next season, they need to look to move on from Matt Ryan, and they need to look to trade Matt Ryan. Let me say that once again. The Atlanta Falcons need to look to try to trade Matt Ryan at some point this season or next season. And by the way, me saying that is not an indictment on Matt Ryan as a quarterback at all. Now, is Matt Ryan the same quarterback that won an MVP a couple years ago that got the Falcons to the Super Bowl? No, he's not that same quarterback. However, Matt Ryan is very reliable. Matt Ryan, he rarely misses games. He's very durable. He's a solid decision maker. He's pretty accurate. Throws a good deep ball when you give him time in the pocket. You could do a whole lot worse than Matt Ryan being your starting quarterback. Matt Ryan is a very good, reliable quarterback that's won a lot of games and has accomplished a lot in the National Football League. But in an increasingly mobile league at the quarterback position, when you look at guys like Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, even guys like Aaron Rodgers and the young gun in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, they can move around the pocket. Matt Ryan doesn't fit the mold of 2020 quarterbacks. He just doesn't. He's not the most mobile guy anymore. He never has been the most mobile guy. He's a throwback pocket passer. And Matt Ryan, he's 35 years old. Matt Ryan, over the last 3 seasons, has a 14-21 record. And I think the Falcons have reached their ceiling with Matt Ryan. The Falcons need to restart. They have reached their ceiling with Matt Ryan, and they need to find a way to tank for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or maybe draft Trey Lance. The Atlanta Falcons have no business trying to compete in 2020 because they don't have the team to compete in 2020. And honestly, like I said, Matt Ryan, listen, we've seen this guy get to a Super Bowl. The opportunity was blown. The Falcons are not going to get back with Matt Ryan. The writing is on the wall. The Falcons need to get the fans excited once again. When I think of the Atlanta Falcons and I think Matt Ryan is their quarterback, I don't get excited anymore. But if their quarterback for the future is Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or Trey Lance, I'm kind of excited. And they need to rebuild. The Falcons, Atlanta, your team's not going anywhere. You've had all these years with Matt Ryan to try to win a Super Bowl. Do Matt Ryan a favor and trade him to a better team that could utilize him. There is a team out there that this offseason would like to have Matt Ryan. I don't know if you could trade Matt Ryan during the season, but in the offseason, if you could trade away Matt Ryan, if you have a bad record, do it. Let's say the New York Giants or the New York Jets have a top 3 pick in this upcoming draft, and that's very likely. Why not trade away Julio Jones and try to move up to get to that spot? Why not trade away Julio Jones or Grady Jarrett or Deion Jones, their star linebacker? Why not trade away some of those players and try to get that number 2, number 3, or number 1 overall pick so you can select a Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields to restart your franchise? I don't think I'm crazy here, people. I think the Falcons need to restart. Okay, listen, this team is not going anywhere, and this team is not going to be competing in the NFC or be a perennial playoff team. The writing's on the wall. The Falcons have reached their ceiling with Matt Ryan. They've reached their ceiling with Dan Quinn. Julio Jones deserves to go to a contending team like the Philadelphia Eagles, potentially. You know, whatever team needs a wide receiver at the moment is the team that Julio Jones should go to. You know, do Julio Jones a favor. Do Matt Ryan a favor. Trade them away. Restart things. You know, retool the franchise and clean house. If the Atlanta Falcons are truly smart, they need to trade away Matt Ryan, they need to fire Dan Quinn, and they need to clean house and rebuild this franchise from the ground up. And honestly, if you can do that with Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, that is the ideal situation for the Atlanta Falcons going forward as far as their future is concerned. I want to talk about the Cleveland Browns because the Cleveland Browns absolutely curb stomped and mollywopped and destroyed the Dallas Cowboys this past Sunday in Jerry World, and they got a big-time win. They won that game 49-38. And the Cleveland Browns are now 3-1 on the season. Now, I could take this time to poo-poo the Cowboys and say, Dallas sucks. They stink. They're no good. I told you, Cowboys fans. And yes, I told you, Cowboys fans. Listen, Dallas has been everything that I said they were going to be in the offseason. In the offseason, I said Dallas is going to put up a lot of points. And guess what? They put up a lot of points. Their offense has been very, very good. It's been prolific at times. Has that offense come to life in garbage time most of the time? Yeah, but for the most part, Dak Prescott, that offense, they're moving the football pretty well. Dak's putting up good numbers. But I said, Dak Prescott, he's not very good at winning big games versus winning teams. I said that defense was going to be absolute doo. And guess what? All those things have been true. I also said that Mike McCarthy is not a great head coach. He's an average coach at best, and Dallas fans did not want to listen to me. And, well, it looks like so far I've been right. Dallas is not a contender. I told you guys Dallas was not a Super Bowl contender. I told you that Dallas was not a playoff team, and so far I'm going to stand by those statements. But I want to focus in on the Cleveland Browns in this episode because at one point in that game, the score was 41-14 in favor of Cleveland. So when you look at the final box score, you look at that score and you see 49-38, and you say, oh, the game was kind of relatively close. No, for the most part, Cleveland dominated most of this game. Like I said, at one point, the game was 41-14. Cleveland was in cruise control of the game. The Browns, they've been bad for so long. I'm so happy the Cleveland Browns got a huge win, man. For the last 20 years, Cleveland's been a laughingstock. And, I picked the Cleveland Browns to make the playoffs in the offseason. And so far, I'm going to stick to that pick. I'm going to stick to that pick based on what I've seen. I do think that Cleveland has the potential to lose to Indianapolis this week just because the Indianapolis Colts have a very good defense, actually the number one defense in the NFL, and Cleveland is coming off an emotional win, a big primetime win versus Dallas that was nationally televised. So Cleveland, don't smell yourself too much. Indianapolis could spoil your party, this Sunday in Cleveland, okay? But even if the Browns were to lose to the Colts, I still have a lot of confidence in this team going forward, okay? Looking at the Cleveland Browns on the season, sure, they beat the Bengals. Sure, they beat the Washington football team when Dwayne Haskins, pretty much gift-wrapped them the game with all of his turnovers, But this was a game that Cleveland sort of needed to win. This was a game that Cleveland kind of needed to at least play well in to say, hey, at least we might have arrived. And guess what? I think Cleveland has officially arrived at least this year. The Cleveland Browns versus Dallas had 307 rushing yards. That is mind-boggling to me. They control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football for the entire game, both on offense and defense. Nick Chubb, he's out for a little while. He suffered an injury in the game, but Cleveland still has a very good run game despite Nick Chubb, having to miss some time potentially. They've still got Kareem Hunt. He's very, very good. Nick Chubb is a blow to their team. But man, I gotta say, Baker Mayfield was efficient. He played very well, had 2 touchdowns in the game, had a pass rating of 100. And listen, man, Baker Mayfield is now finally realizing I don't have to be Superman. I don't have to be Superman because Baker Mayfield last year tried to do way too much too often. And that got Baker Mayfield into some trouble, at times. He was throwing interceptions. He was wildly inaccurate at times, made some bad decisions. But now that Baker Mayfield has an improved offensive line, now that Baker Mayfield has a real run game, and now that Baker Mayfield has a guy in Kevin Stefanski that understands what Baker Mayfield is and understands what Baker Mayfield does well and what he doesn't do well, now Baker Mayfield looks like a franchise quarterback from time to time. Now, there's going to come a point in time where Baker Mayfield is going to have to go out there and flat out win the Cleveland Browns a game or two because at some point the Cleveland Browns running game is going to get taken away. So the only real question I have for Cleveland is, can Baker Mayfield make the necessary throws to, win a shootout with Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, or Ben Roethlisberger? Can he do that? That's the biggest question for Cleveland going forward. But I like Baker Mayfield. I liked Baker Mayfield when he was coming out of Oklahoma. He took a step back this past year. This year he's taking a step forward. He's playing very well. And like I said, man, Cleveland, they got some real players. They've got very good wide receivers. Odell Beckham Jr. had a great game. And I am so happy that Kevin Stefanski has found very creative ways to get Odell Beckham Jr. involved within this offense. Freddie Kitchens last year did not know how to utilize Odell Beckham Jr. properly. The Cleveland Browns offense suffered because of it. Well, guess what? This year, the Cleveland Browns have a real head coach that knows what he's doing. And so far, Cleveland, they look pretty good, man. You know, I really like what I've seen from Cleveland. Myles Garrett is also a beast coming off the edge. Myles Garrett right now might be the best pass rusher in the entire NFL. It's either Myles Garrett or TJ Watt. You know, I think that Khalil Mack might be in that conversation, but for my money, for what it's worth right now, either TJ Watt or Myles Garrett are the best edge rushers in the National Football League. It's between those two, and I would actually pick Myles Garrett. I would give him the slight edge over TJ Watt. Myles Garrett's a beast. The last 3 games, he's had a sack in each game. He's forced a fumble in each game. He's wreaking havoc. And listen, you can't, block Myles Garrett one-on-one. And if you do block Myles Garrett one-on-one, he's going to make it pay. Myles Garrett, he was picked number 1 overall a couple years ago. He is definitely a hit. And I got to say, man, Cleveland, improved offensive line, improved head coach, a new rejuvenated Baker Mayfield that understands what he needs to do to win football games, a real run game, star wide receivers, a defense that can rush the passer. You know, the back end of the secondary is a little bit of a question, but Cleveland, their defense is good enough. And I think Cleveland's going to be a playoff team this year. The Cleveland Browns got a very impressive win versus Dallas, and I am so happy for the Cleveland Browns. It's very interesting because when I look at Baltimore and Pittsburgh, those 2 teams look pretty good, and Cleveland's right there with them. The AFC North might very well get 3 teams into the playoffs in 2020, and that would be super fun. But look out, people, because the Cleveland Browns, they are a legit playoff team in 2020, in my opinion. I want to shift to Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the offseason, I doubted Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers. I said the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to be an 8-8 football team. I did not expect them to make the playoffs. I said this team had a very good defense, but lack of perimeter weapons on the outside of wide receiver and tight end. I wasn't a huge believer in the wide receivers that Pittsburgh had, but so far those wide receivers look pretty good. And I also had questions about Ben Roethlisberger, as Ben Roethlisberger last year suffered a major injury. And Ben Roethlisberger, for what it's worth, he's 38 years old, and he's coming off a major surgery. I have my concerns. I think that those concerns were somewhat warranted, somewhat, fair, unfair. You guys can judge that. But I will say Pittsburgh so far during the 2020 NFL season through 3 games has been better than I thought. The offensive line's played pretty well. The defense has been doing damage like I projected they would. Juju Smith-Schuster has looked good. Deontay Johnson has looked good. James Washington has looked good. Ben Roethlisberger is spraying the ball around to these guys. Eric Ebron is a pretty good red zone target. And Chase Claypool, their rookie wide receiver out of Notre Dame, has made some big splashy plays, And so far, Pittsburgh is 3-0, but here's the thing. I'm not quite sold on Pittsburgh just yet. I want to see Pittsburgh, play for about another 2 weeks or so. I think that if they can beat Philadelphia and whoever is up next on their schedule, if they can, look good in their next couple of games, win or lose, I might be all in on Pittsburgh being a playoff team. The only reason why I've kind of pushed back on Pittsburgh being a playoff team is just because the 3 teams they have beaten have been the Giants, the Broncos, and what's the other team? The Texans. Yes, the Texans. And all 3 of those teams have been combined for 1 win on the season. So I want to see if Pittsburgh is for real, because when I look at Pittsburgh and their roster and when I watch the games, they passed the eye test. But I want to see them go up against a legit opponent before I kind of say, hey, Pittsburgh, I'm all in. But the one thing that I can admit is I think that Ben Roethlisberger is still capable of playing at a high level. I could question the Pittsburgh Steelers and whether or not they're going to melt down the stretch because, in 2018, the team at one point was 7-2-1 through 10 games and missed the playoffs. So we've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers unravel in the past down the stretch. But I will say, I whiffed on Ben Roethlisberger. If the Steelers are going to miss the playoffs or underperform this year, it's most likely not going to be based on Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe Ben, shows up late in the season and is looking washed. Maybe he doesn't last the full season, but so far so good from the eye test in regards to Ben Roethlisberger. I've loved what I've seen from Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that Big Ben Roethlisberger is officially back, man. I doubted Big Ben, but Big Ben, he's moving around pretty well. He's still very accurate. He's been making very good decisions. There is still some zip to the football. He still has that big, strong arm that we all know and love him for. He had an 84-yard touchdown pass to Chase Claypool where he just flicked the ball 50 yards down the field with ease versus the Denver Broncos. Chase Claypool did the rest, ran for about 30 yards for a touchdown. There was also a touchdown to Eric Ebron in the back of the end zone. It was a thing of beauty. He also hit Deontay Johnson on the run for a touchdown versus the Denver Broncos, where he just ran outside the pocket and delivered a dart in the end zone. That was a great throw. And listen, man, I doubted Ben Roethlisberger, but I think that Ben Roethlisberger is still a quarterback that is more than capable of winning you a Super Bowl and more than capable of playing at a high level. Ben Roethlisberger, in my opinion, is officially back. And listen, Ben Roethlisberger really worked hard in the offseason. There was an interview that he did with Kirk Herbstreit on Monday Night Football. I listened to it before the Monday Night Football game versus the New York Giants. And he talked about, some of the things that, he was focusing on in the offseason. He talked about getting into the right shape. He talked about, still feeling that he has a lot to offer the game of football. He wanted to return for his teammates, and he wanted to get back to playing some Pittsburgh Steelers football. Ben Roethlisberger, you can tell he put in the work. You can tell his rehab went very well. You can tell the surgery went very well. And Ben Roethlisberger's arm looks good as new, man. He's moving around. He's making plays. And listen, man, you got to be able to have good quarterback play in today's NFL if you want to win a Super Bowl. We saw the San Francisco 49ers, kind of hide Jimmy Garoppolo for the full season up until they faced Patrick Mahomes, and they could hide Jimmy Garoppolo no more. Jimmy Garoppolo had to make the throws to win the game. He could not. Patrick Mahomes did make the throws versus the 49ers defense, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl as a result over the 49ers, despite the 49ers maybe having a more complete roster. So Ben Roethlisberger, I doubted him. I was wrong about Ben Roethlisberger, not quite officially sold on Pittsburgh. If I were to guess right now if they make the playoffs, I'd probably say yes. But again, I've seen in years past where Pittsburgh has unraveled down the stretch, so I'm not officially going to say that I was wrong about Pittsburgh. I want to wait about a couple more games. I want to kind of see them play, some better teams before I say, hey, I'm on the Pittsburgh bandwagon. But so far, Pittsburgh looks good, and Ben Roethlisberger is officially back. He's playing at a high level. In the past couple of years, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo get to a Super Bowl. We've seen Nick Foles get to a Super Bowl. We've seen Jared Goff get to a Super Bowl. A little while back, we saw Joe Flacco get to a Super Bowl in, I believe, 2013. It was either 2013 or 2012. Joe Flacco got to a Super Bowl. We've seen a washed-up Peyton Manning win a Super Bowl. The way Ben Roethlisberger is playing right now, he is more than capable of playing at a high level in the playoffs and leading the Pittsburgh Steelers to a Super Bowl title. I doubted Ben Roethlisberger, and I was wrong. And he is capable of playing at a high level and going out there and winning you a Super Bowl, no doubt about it. Well, people, that's pretty much all I have for episode number 18 of the Juice Alert. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and until next time. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God-blessed day, and I'm out.